Good morning, everyone. Am I on? I am on. I can't really hear myself. I thought maybe you hadn't unmuted. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Batter Round on this beautiful and hot Saturday morning. My name is Paul Valley. I'm your host. With me, as always, is my incomparable, immeasurable co-host and producer, Zach Goodman. Although I gotta say, I produce the show. You run the soundboard. I'm the producer.
I'm the sure. We'll go with that.
I'm the producer now.
Does that mean Glenn Clark is the? So you weren't producing Glenn Clark's show all that time. You were just the sidekick who ran the soundboard.
Zach's the producer. Zach's the producer. Welcome.
Sure.
Welcome to the Batter Round. Thanks for tuning in and joining us today. The Batter Round is brought to you by your local Toyota dealers. Make the most out of every day in a Toyota RAV4, available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today. And Zach, Orioles may be playing some of their best baseball of the year. John Colson over the Grand Poobah of press boxes yelled in 5 years. And it's true. I have to be honest. I've been producing or hosting this show since December of 2019. Mm-hmm. And this is the best team I have covered for Press Box.
I wouldn't disagree.
Yeah, this is the best team that I've covered for Press Box. And it's been a ton of fun, you know, and last night was no different. The Orioles, they go with a bullpen game for the second time since Sunday, and for the second time since Sunday, Austin Voth gets the start out of the bullpen, and he goes 3 innings. He allows 1 hit, 1 run, 3 strikeouts. He did very well against the Rays in his start on Sunday. I was actually at that game on Father's Day.
Right.
And the rest of the bullpen came in, gave up nothing. And when I say nothing, not just no runs, no hits.
Yeah.
The Orioles pitching staff, a bullpen game, 1 hits the Chicago White Sox, who are really struggling.
They are
right now.
They are.
They are really struggling right now. And it just goes to show how much they're struggling, because the Orioles' first run of the game, Cedric Mullins leads off the game with a bunt single. He steals second. He goes to third on a wild pitch, and he scores on a wild pitch. The Orioles' second run of the game comes with Adley Rutschman. He doubles. He goes to third on a ground out, and then he scores on a balk. Mm-hmm. So the Orioles have a 2-1 lead because of the White Sox imploding on the mound.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it last year to a pretty great extent, but when they hired Tony La Russa, I think Stan, myself, and yourself all questioned that move. We said, you know, you've got a manager who just put you in the playoffs, you got to the wild card game, and sure, you didn't go much farther than that, but we questioned him coming back. And he's I believe, a Hall of Fame manager, correct? I mean, he's been around
He's
the
in
game.
the Hall of Fame,
right?
yes.
He's in the Hall of Fame already. He's been around the game for a great number of years, and the guy has great experience. But I think we're starting to see some of the shortcomings that his team has at this moment, and they're simply well underperforming. I mean, they have so much talent. Guys like Luis Robert, Jose Abreu, and Andrew Vaughn. I mean, these are really good players, and they're well underperforming.
And that's before you mention Eloy Jimenez and Tim Anderson.
Sure. There's a number of great players. And the starting rotation, you've got guys like Dylan Cease, Lucas Giolito. It's a stacked team.
Lance Lynn, I haven't heard Lance Lynn at all.
I believe he's been injured all year. I believe.
Okay. Yeah. He was in the Cy Young conversation last year.
He's been great, and the talent is immeasurable, but they don't play up to that talent level. Maybe it's La Russa's fault. Maybe it's a team chemistry thing. I don't know what it is, but it's certainly giving the Orioles a chance to step in and play well.
Well, and there's a lot of distractions with that team.
Sure.
Whether it's La Russa putting his foot in his mouth, or it's Tim Anderson and
Josh Donaldson.
and Josh Donaldson, and now the bench is cleared yesterday in the second inning. They hit Jorge Mateo, and it looked pretty blatant.
It was intentional.
It looked pretty intentional. You could tell by Kopech. That's his name, is it Kopech?
Kopech. Yeah.
Kopech. You could tell by Kopech's reaction that it was basically intentional, right? Yeah. And you'd think that this is because Josh Harrison got hit in in his back arm the day before, which was not intentional.
No.
And he tried to move out of the way and stuck the arm out, and that's how it got hit.
Yeah.
I don't understand throwing at Jorge Mateo in that situation. And Mateo made him pay because he stole second, he went to third, and he ended up scoring on a Richie Martin single, right? So, but the bench is clear, and that's another distraction, and Tim Anderson's right in the middle of that going back and forth with Rougned Odor. Whether it's your manager, whether it's Tim Anderson, and Tim Anderson was in the right with the Josh Donaldson.
Yeah.
Let's make no mistake about that. He was in the right.
Horrible comment by Jeff. Terrible.
Yeah. And you don't know him well enough to make a joke like that, right? So, but that's neither here nor there for this particular situation, but it all ties in together that this is a team that's imploding.
Right.
You know, they're destroying themselves from the inside, and the way they're playing, getting shut out by the Orioles on Thursday, and then one hit by the Orioles in a bullpen game on Friday. I don't know that La Russa finishes the season.
I don't think
as a manager.
I think his seat is very hot at the moment.
It's got to be.
Jim Palmer said last night. Look, Jim Palmer's been around a long time. He's been broadcasting since the '90s. He's been watching baseball for a long time. He knows La Russa very well, I would assume. And he said on the broadcast, throwing at guys as a retaliation effort is something that La Russa's teams have always done. That's something he said on the broadcast last night, and that stuck out to me. You can't do that. You just can't retaliate like that.
You can retaliate if it's warranted.
Well, it wasn't warranted, right?
Dean Kremer losing a fastball and hitting Josh Harrison was not intentional.
No.
That was not intentional. Now,
because why would Dean Kremer want to hit Josh Harrison?
Why would anybody want to hit Josh Harrison?
Right.
Now, if the guy before him had hit a home run and showboated, and then Kremer drills Harrison in the ribs,
then you would, yeah.
Okay, or if Harrison had homered in his previous at bat and took 25 seconds to get, or 30 seconds to get around the bases, it's probably intentional. That was not intentional. And to throw at Jorge Mateo, that's low-hanging fruit.
It's childish. It really is.
Yeah.
It's retaliation that wasn't warranted, and that's La Russa, and that's what Jim Palmer said, and I think that's a very accurate depiction of the situation. And maybe like you said, his seat has to be very hot at the moment.
It's got to be.
You're playing again well under the. They've had some injuries. I get that. I mean, they've had some guys go down, and Luis Robert missed all of last year, and he still had some issues this year. But look, this team is way better than the record shows, and La Russa, I think, is the one holding them back.
Yeah, something's got to happen. You look what happened with the Phillies. They fired Joe Girardi, and then they go 15-2 in their next 17 games.
I mean, I've said over and over, it's not that managers, what they put out on the field, lineups and pitching cards or whatever, it's not that makes the difference. It's the team chemistry. And I don't think La Russa's promoting a good one at all. I think this team is... And how could he? He's an old-school baseball mind who's pushing 80 years old, and he's got a bunch of guys in their early to mid-20s who, in a day and age, the whole woke situation and just the way that society is now... How can a guy who's almost 80 years old, who's been managing for 40 years, be in tune with the players that he has? He's not going to be.
I just don't see it. And the thing is, you see managers getting younger and younger and younger, right? And then you have the outlier, which is Tony La Russa, who's almost 80 years old, managing one of the youngest and most energetic teams in baseball. I don't think he has his finger on the pulse of that team at all. And they got rid of Renteria after he took him to the playoffs, and I can't imagine that this team would be playing worse.
Oh, no way.
For Renteria.
And that's what the three of us, when we talked about this extensively last year, we agreed on. We said, look, you've got a manager who took you to the playoffs. What's your reasoning in firing him? I mean, you're bringing back a guy who's in the Hall of Fame, but he's in the Hall of Fame because of what he did 30 years ago, not what he's doing now. It's a different situation. We talked a lot about, too, with Buck Showalter over the years, that Buck Showalter is a guy that kind of resented analytics a little bit, but Buck Showalter is doing a great job with the Mets. So whatever he's doing chemistry-wise is
because
fantastic.
He knows how to manage a clubhouse.
La Russa, on the other hand, he probably rejects analytics. I'm not sure of his situation there, but again, he's 80 years old. He hasn't grown up around that kind of baseball. And like you said, it's hard to put your finger on a pulse of a team that is full of 20-somethings, and when you're 80 years old. That's a very, very tough generational gap there.
Yeah, and what's the owner's name of the White Sox?
Oh, I do not know.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'll look it up.
Stan would be really good at Stan knows this like it's right on the tip of his finger. But
It's Jerry Reinsdorf.
Jerry Reinsdorf, thank you. I knew it began with an R. Jerry Reinsdorf prematurely got rid of La Russa in the 80s when he was managing the White Sox, and he brought him back as a way of himself righting a wrong, basically. But he created another wrong by bringing this guy in who hadn't managed in 10 years. By bringing him in to manage a young ball club that's a different ball club than any club in a different day and age than he's ever managed in. And now he's got a problem on his hands. And they got to figure it out because they're way too talented to, A, be below 500, and B, be playing as poorly as they are right now. Now, again, the Orioles headed in an opposite direction. And we say that the White Sox have more talent.
Yes,
than the Orioles.
Point, yeah.
But the Orioles are kind of evening the playing field, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later. I just realized I didn't set up an Orioles banter segment for our show. I did not. But
we'll get something going.
Yeah, no. Well, you know what? We're going to talk about the heart. We're going to talk about the heart of the Orioles order. In the Orioles banter. We do have 3 guests today. We have Stan the Fan Charles coming up in about 15 minutes. After that, from ESPN, their baseball insider Kiley McDaniel is going to join us to talk about some prospects and the draft. And then at 11:40 from the Locked On Orioles podcast, Connor Newcomb is going to join us. He's on his way to the beach, but he's gracious enough to join us from his trip down there to talk some.
Connor Newcomb, the greatest voice.
Oh, he's incredible voice.
It's insane.
I wish he would read me a bedtime story.
I know
every night.
This guy just has the silkiest, smoothest voice. It's crazy.
Incredible voice.
Yeah,
incredible voice. But look, Orioles right now are playing better baseball than the White Sox, and the talent level is beginning to match.
Yeah.
Right. And you look at Austin Hayes, another RBI double last night. Adley Rutschman, another double. He has 9 doubles in his last 13 games. Everything he hits is loud. Even his outs. How many times have you seen him smoke a line drive right at the first baseman?
I mean, you saw it with Pollock last night, making the diving catch and taking away what would have been another double. Everything he's hitting hard.
He flew out to dead center field in his final at bat.
398.
He hit a baseball 398 feet, and he got out for it. Everything he is. And look, we saw how long it took for guys like Bobby Witt Jr. and Julio Rodriguez to really get going, right? Spencer Torkelson still hasn't figured it out.
No, not at all.
Right? And then you look at Adley Rutschman, and after the first 2 weeks where he was still getting his bearings and still getting used to the speed of the Major League game, he's hitting over 320 his last 13 games. And like we said, the slugging percentage is off the charts because he got 11 extra base hits in those 13 games.
Right.
This is a guy who is, I don't want to say he's becoming a superstar, but he's tabbed to be that. But he's becoming a star right before our eyes in a very short period of time.
I think we're seeing him start to realize the potential that we all know he has. And that's where we're I wouldn't jump to any conclusions yet, like, oh, he's going to be this or he's going to be that. But he's certainly playing to the point where we can start to get excited about him. And he looks comfortable. That's the biggest thing.
And the reason I brought up those other guys, he has gotten it going
quicker,
far quicker than the other highly touted rookies.
Torkelson has been horrible.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now you look at, and you're going to sound off on a guy who got sent down prematurely by the Angels. It's another great sounding off segment that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But what Rutschman's doing, and look, Julio Rodriguez is running away with the Rookie of the Year right now in the American League. I think we can all agree to that.
Sure.
But Adley Rutschman will have something to say about this before it's all said and done. If he continues doing what he's doing, I look up every game and he's got a double.
Right.
You know, and he had a moonshot home run on Thursday. Now, he drove in 3 of the 4 runs on Thursday, and this is a guy who's he's really, you want to see him walk a little bit more. He didn't have a single walk this past week, but that's okay because he hit 278 this past week when all of his hits seem to be extra bases.
It's so refreshing, too, because you've seen the Pedro Severinos of the world and Chance Sisco and Austin Wynns. And nothing against any of those guys, but
they're not good.
They're not Adley Rutschman.
Right.
they're not a future star in this league. And even while some of them, like Wynn specifically, has defensive value, Rutschman's far outclassing any of those guys behind the plate. I mean, he is such a good defender. You talked about it in your notes I see here, so I'll let you explain a little bit more. But at the plate, he's been good, and behind it, he's been better.
He has caught in the last 7 games. He has caught 3 shutouts, 2 one-run games, including a one-hitter.
Yeah.
And look, the team ERA since Rutschman made his debut is 4.45. It was I put together trying to figure out the ERA. His first several games they allowed 6 runs, 5 runs, 6 runs, 8 runs, 5 runs, 12 runs, 9 runs, 5 runs, 6 runs, 6 runs, 8 runs, 6 runs, 11 runs. But since then, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of 9 games. They've allowed 2 runs or less.
Wow.
7 of 9 games, they've allowed 2 runs or less. This team is playing at a high level right now.
They are.
And they're only getting better, right? And this is a team that they've won 3 straight, 6 of 8, and in their last 52 games, we're talking a significant stretch of the season, they're 27-25.
Yeah, that's the number right there that I think everyone should be excited about. I mean, that's a winning record. Winning record for the Baltimore Orioles. Something
over
had.
More than a third of the season.
I mean, look.
Or just about a third of the season.
If that's your record in 2020, you're looking at a potential playoff spot there.
No, they would have made the playoffs.
Okay, yeah.
They would have made the playoffs if they were 2 games above 500.
There you go.
I mean, in 2020.
That's the improvement they've made. And it's clear. I mean, you look across the field, and it's just every position has been significantly upgraded from where it was 2-3 years ago, and that's a huge win for the Orioles. And even, I mean, look, this bullpen has been a big part of the reason, and people overlook it probably because it's a bullpen, and they don't have, I guess, as much star power and notorieties. A lot of the guys like Adley Rutschman do, or Ryan Mountcastle in this lineup. But look, some of these guys they've claimed off waivers. Joey Crable and CNL Perez, Jorge Lopez a few years ago. I mean, these guys are pitching well, and they're pitching far above our expectations, and it's been fun to watch, frankly.
Yeah, and I look at this team, and at the beginning of last year, they swept the Red Sox, and I said, are we supposed to just believe this team is bad because everybody says that they are? They're not going to the playoffs, but this isn't a bad team. No, they were a very bad team. They won 52 games.
They ended up being bad
last year. This is not a bad baseball team by any stretch. And I look at the bullpen, and I'm hoping I can pull this up quickly, but the bullpen is one of the best units, not just in the American League, in all of baseball.
Yeah,
they're one of the best units in all of baseball. Let me get the splits here real quick.
Well, as you were saying, they're 19 wins away from tying their record from last year at 52 games. I mean, that's insane.
They're a month ahead of last year's
schedule
of last year's pace. The Orioles have the 1, 2, 3, 4. They're the 5th best ERA in the American League. And the 6th best ERA in baseball. They'd have the 2nd best ERA in the National League behind the Braves.
Bullpen specifically?
The bullpen ERA is 3.08.
Wow.
And that's when you also think about the fact that they're not including Austin Voth's 5 2/3 innings of 2-run ball in that. This unit over his last 2 outings, because technically they were starts, but he was a reliever starting a bullpen game.
Sure.
Right? This unit has been the saving grace for the Orioles. The offense has been really good since the beginning of May, and now even when the offense hasn't been great, they had 10 hits on Thursday, but they only scored 4 runs.
Yeah.
Right, and then they had 5 hits last night, and they managed to win a ball game. Right, and then so even when the offense isn't firing on all cylinders, now the pitching's keeping them in ball games. That's what this brings me to. The Orioles' offense is good. The defense is good and getting better.
I would say the defense is excellent. I think it's been great.
When I was going through, they seem to have an error almost every game. When I was going through trying to figure out the ERA with Adley Rutschman, there were only a handful of games where they didn't have an error.
Okay, fair enough.
But the defense is getting better. The outfield defense has been what they did on Thursday night. All 3 of those guys, and Austin Hayes, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later in the show. He is clicking on every possible cylinder.
He really is.
And we didn't even mention the fact he hit for the cycle in a 6-inning game.
He did.
In 4 at-bats on Wednesday night. He hit for the cycle.
He did.
Absolutely. He comes up in a downpour in the 6th inning, and he rips and all he needs is a double, and he rips a double. Like, he just, as soon as he hit it, I yelled at my wife and said, oh my God, we were watching Stranger Things, and I was watching on my phone. I was watching Austin Hayes on my phone, and I yelled, he did it! Before the ball even landed, I yelled, he did it, because there's no way he's going to third on that.
He's not going to do that.
But he's absolutely tearing the cover off the ball. He's playing great defense. He is second in the majors in outfield assists. He throws the fastest outfield assist, velocity-wise, in like 5 years for the Orioles. And of the 11 all-time fastest outfield assists thrown by the Orioles, he has 10 of them.
Wow.
He threw that ball 97 miles an hour to throw that guy out at home plate.
On Wednesday night. That's great tag by Rutschman, too.
Yeah, and that's another thing, and people discount this a lot, and this is what I loved about Matt Wieters. When Matt Wieters was a part of this franchise, plays at the plate almost always went in the Orioles' favor because Matt Wieters, if the ball short-hopped him, if he had to do a pick to his left or his right, he was catching that ball, and he was applying a quick, thorough tag. Right. And that's what you're getting out of Adley Rutschman. And that's a difference that a good catcher makes. People aren't paying attention to that. Yeah. But a good catcher saves you runs in those situations.
100%. I mean, I went off on Pedro Severino a few times on the show because I said, number one, he can't block a ball to save his life. Severino had this kind of laziness behind the plate where if the ball wasn't exactly thrown right to him, it was going to the backstop. Like it was 95% of the time. Rutschman, no. Rutschman's blocking the ball. I mean, you saw him last night get up out of the crouch and run to the ball to make sure a guy didn't get to second base. I mean, the guy he blocks pretty much everything. I mean, you don't see a lot of pass balls, wild pitches from him. And then, like you said, his presence just on these throws in and plays at the plate, it's almost like he's so big back there that he's always going to make that catch. He seems like he knows how to catch a ball off a short hop, better than most catchers I've ever seen. And the guy he's just a pro back there. He's a pro behind the plate. That's helping out this team so much.
I was at the game on Sunday when they beat the Rays 2-1. And there's a base hit, and it was in like the second or third inning. There's a base hit to right field. McKenna's playing right field. He gets the ball into Odor, and it's not a great throw to Odor. He had to leap up to catch it. Yeah. He catches it in one fluid motion, fires the throw home. Right? Great play by Odor.
It was.
But Rutschman had to reach behind himself a little bit, across his body, catch the ball, and then throw that tag down. Right. And I yelled, what a tag. Yeah. Because the throw was good, not great. The tag was great. And that saved the game. The Orioles won that game by 1 run. They won it 2-1. That saved the game for the Orioles that early on. Rutschman is 100% a difference maker.
He is.
100% a difference maker. And now with the bat coming on too, all those extra base hits, this team, everything that he does on the field makes this team better.
Yeah, no doubt.
Across the board. And it's amazing because this is what they said he was going to do.
Right.
How many times have we seen a prospect that's supposed to do this and they don't?
Well, right. It's all the time. All the time.
And it's early. I get that it's early, but the fact that he's already doing this, and he's going to have his bumps along the way. He's going to go into cold stretches at the plate, but the defense is always going to be there. The arm is always going to be there, and the bat's already playing up.
Right.
It's been incredible, and it brings me to my next point. The Orioles' offense is, with the exception of they're not getting much out of shortstop, and they're not.
No.
Shortstop, second base, and third base are big offensive holes.
They are
for the Orioles on this team right now.
And
right?
I think they're really the only ones left at this point because you have Kyle Stowers coming up to replace Santander eventually, and that's
And I'm telling you, Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westberg are going to be your starting left side of the infield on opening day next year.
And the thing is, if it's not Stowers, say Stowers is a bust, which we obviously don't know, but Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad, John Rhodes. I mean, there's a number of guys
who hit his first home run last night.
So left field pretty solidified too.
Yeah, and you look at the offense, and it's only getting better, and it's only going to continue to get better with the emergence of these other prospects. You look at how good the bullpen is. The only thing holding this team back right now is the starting pitching. And the starting pitching's been really good this past week, and guess what? They're 6-2 this past week.
Yeah.
Right? They've allowed 5 runs since Sunday.
Wow.
5 runs.
Yeah.
5 runs. It's the starting pitching. And we're going to talk about this with Stan, and we're going to get into all this in Orioles banter with 3 guests. I don't know how long that segment's going to be. But Matt Harvey threw 6 shutout innings the other day for Aberdeen. Apparently, he looked really good down in the Florida Coast League or in the Florida Complex League while he was getting himself geared up for the season. His suspension's up on Tuesday, Probably won't come up to help the Orioles immediately, but will be here eventually. 10 starts and a 4.18 ERA in the second half of the season last year. That Matt Harvey 100% helps this team, right? You look at the one missing piece, and the one missing piece is the starting rotation. And with Dean Kremer and Tyler Wells are forming an incredible 1-2 punch right now. And now with Kremer, 4 starts, the sample size is still really small, but it beats the alternative, and he's doing really well now.
Kramer's been excellent. You can't ask for more.
He's been he's allowed 1 earned run in his last 21 and third innings. Yeah. Last 20 in the third innings. He's been fantastic. Tyler Wells has been the key cog in that rotation all season. He's been the most consistent pitcher in that rotation. So I just have to wonder what the Orioles' plan is moving forward, and what this hot stretch and the way they're playing this season means for this rebuild as it currently stands. With that in mind, we got to call Stan the Fan Charles. We're going to get him on the line here momentarily. Just want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by PressBox's Glenn Clark Radio. It is the definitive place to find the best daily discussion of Baltimore sports. You can watch the show every weekday from 10 a.m. to noon at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline or facebook.com/PressBoxSports, or you can listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio with podcasts available on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. You never know who might pop up on GCR. This week, the guys called up a potential Orioles #1 overall pick, Jackson Holliday, recently re-signed Ravens edge rusher Steven Means, and baseball legend Nelson Cruz. Find those interviews and more in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature right now at PressBoxOnline.com. We've got Stan the Fan joining us here in just a moment. Stan and Glenn Clark are over at K&S Associates for a car wash today from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Car washes are $15, and all proceeds will go to the Hamden Family Center. Stan is on the line with us right now. Good morning, Stan. How's the car wash going? How are you doing?
Hey, the one thing I didn't give you was the address. We're over at 3939 Falls Road. I've known the owner of K&S since back probably in the mid-'80s when I used to take my car here when I lived in the neighborhood. Emir's been an advertiser and a friend of mine, and press boxes for, like 35 years, something like that. And he's done a lot in this neighborhood. The Hamden Family Center is going to benefit from today's car wash, along with the fact that they produce a calendar, The Boys of Hamden, which I think Glenn and I are going to pose nude in this year. That'll really spike up sales.
Oh,
but
Zach's
the car
already
wash
run out the door to go get it.
Yeah, I know you and Zach will run out and immediately buy copies of that.
Absolutely.
But all kidding aside, it's all for a good cause here. Plenty of room for car washes. We're here till 1 o'clock. 3939 Falls Road, directly across the street from a small McDonald's. And just up and around the corner from the Royal Farms on 41st Street, 3939 Falls Road, and it's money's going to a good cause. Car wash is just $15. I'll step inside to do our segment now.
All right, sounds good. Now I gotta ask, Stan, are you and do they have? I know Glenn has to wear the hot dog Speedo. Did they get you to do that too?
I'm wearing my bathing suit. I wear a different type of Speedo. I used to be a swimmer, actually, until my neck surgery.
Okay.
So I've got my longer Speedos on. So
all right.
I've got them on. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Glenn kept posting pictures of the Speedo itself that he had to wear, and I think he was super nervous. But it seems like, based on social media, like he's having a good time.
Oh, he's
having a good time. Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Now the Orioles are having a great time right now, Stan. They've won 3 games in a row. They've won 6 of their last 8. They've allowed just 5 runs in 5 games since last Sunday. And they are 27-25 over their last 52 games after that win over the White Sox last night. Let's talk about that win last night. Austin Voth goes 3 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 3 strikeouts. He's allowed 3 earned runs in 9 innings with the Orioles after allowing 21 earned runs in 18 2/3 innings with the Nationals this year. Is that a product of the Orioles analytics team and Chris Holt, or is it just, him coming back to the mean?
I'm not quite sure of which it is, but again, I don't mean to keep tooting our horn. I think a lot of this has to do with the revival of the Orioles catching.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that we actually have catchers that know how to know how to actually receive a baseball, catch a baseball, and also perhaps maybe communicate better with Chris Holt with what they want to use for pitches. You know, calling the game is also a lost art, and I would dare say that the catching. Austin Wynns was a fairly decent receiver, a catch and throw guy, you know, and probably had an idea back behind the plate. I don't think Chance Sisco knew what the hell he was doing.
No.
And Pedro Severino certainly did. Now, is there some improvement based on the work of Chris Holt? Of course there is. But, you know, pitchers that throw and they know that the catcher is going to catch the ball, and they trust what the catcher is putting down in terms of fingers. I don't think that can be underestimated with the kind of the revival of this pitching staff.
Stan, how big is the drop-off from Adley Rutschman defensively to Robinson Chirinos? I think, you know, Chirinos has been around for a while, but some of his metrics show that he's not the best receiver behind the plate. But how big is that drop-off, and how much is it really important for the Orioles to have Rutschman catching as opposed to DHing in the lineup right now?
Well, I certainly prefer him catching, but because I think he's really a sort of a, what's it called, artiste back there. But I think you saw, I can't tell a lie just to fit the story, that Anthony Benboom and Robinson Chirinos were doing a far better job receiving and calling games and buying into what Chris Holt and the analytics people want to throw, you know, in different situations. So I think it's important that he catch, you know, but you know, a young guy like that can certainly catch 3-4 times a week. I don't know that I want him catching 6 times a week. His bat, I like the fact that, you know, they're using him wisely and not going to burn him out in the hot summer of Baltimore.
Yeah, and what I noticed last week in particular, he played – Adley Rutschman was in the lineup 8 games in a row at one point. And then he finally got a day off, but I think he caught 5 or 6 of those games. They've been trying to keep him in the lineup, and now his bat's getting even hotter. He seems to be one of those guys where the more he plays, the better he gets. And I look at guys like Yadier Molina and Salvador Perez, who are catching 140 games a year, and they're 2 of the best catchers in baseball. Is that the kind of player you anticipate Adley Rutschman being throughout his career?
I just think that those days of catchers catching 140, you know, I mean, I remember you used to have catchers that catch 150 games a year, you know. I just don't see the wisdom in that. If you've got somebody that's pretty special back there,
right,
in the age of the designated hitter, and now it's fully, you know, in all throughout baseball, I don't see anything wrong with Rutschman maybe getting 5 to 7 days off period during the season, but catching 125, 130, you know, and DHing 25 times, you know, something like that.
Now, does it worry you to have one catcher in the lineup catching and another catcher in the lineup DHing? Because if one of those guys gets hurt, you're going to lose your designated hitter. Is that any concern to you?
Not really. Not really.
Not really.
You know, so in one given game, you know, with the way they move players around today, you have another catcher up the next day.
Right.
So you're talking about potentially losing the designated hitter in one game.
Yeah.
It doesn't scare me. You know?
Now, I do want to talk about what the Orioles have done against the White Sox specifically. They throw a shutout on Thursday. They throw a one-hitter yesterday. The White Sox, whether it's Tony La Russa putting his foot in his mouth, or Tim Anderson quarreling with Josh Donaldson, or, you know, now they're throwing at Jorge Mateo for literally no reason after the Josh Harrison hit by pitch, and it seemed pretty egregious that that was an intentional.
Well, Tony La Russa's teams have been that way since he first managed the Oakland A's back in.
Right.
I mean, since he first managed the White Sox back in 82, 83, 84, you know, he's always been sort of and don't get me wrong, I had a great deal of respect for La Russa, and he was really one of the true innovators he was one of the first guys that really got that bullpen usage down to an art form. So I don't want to just cast aspersions at him, but one of the things he's always been is sort of this macho guy, and that was ridiculous last night. Targeting Jorge Mateo.
Yeah, it clears the benches. The White Sox end up losing that game, getting only one hit when the Orioles are going out there throwing a bullpen game in which Austin Voth is the starting pitcher for you. How hot is Tony La Russa's seat right now? Because I can't imagine this team is underperforming, and he's right in the middle of it.
Yeah, they're a mess right now. In fairness to Tony, he's got just a tremendous number of injuries.
Yeah,
that have piled on. He just got Tim Anderson back 2 or 3 days ago. Missing Eloy Jimenez has been hurt for a second straight year. Don't know when he's coming back. Engel's hurt. Harrison's hurt now. Danny Mendick just
he's out for the year.
ACL. He might be out for the season. Grandal's on the IL.
Yeah.
And Liam Hendricks is on the IL. They're a freaking mess right now, the White Sox.
So do you think
they don't give any indication at being ready right now to put a run together, the kind of run together they're going to need? Now not in fairness, but in reality, what are they, about 8 games behind the Twins? The Twins are no great bargain. I think the best team in that division is the Indians. Their pitching is just starting to come around. They just got Franmil Reyes back after being on the IL for over a month with a hamstring problem. He looks like he's lost some weight. I think they're a dangerous team in that division, and I don't think the White Sox have what it takes.
Yeah.
And Lucas Giolito has receded, from being on the verge of being a great pitcher. He's just as able to get a four inning start with 7 earned runs as he is 7 innings of shutout baseball.
Yeah, it's a crapshoot. And how much?
And they just got Lance Lynn back, who's going to obviously take a few starts to get up to par, and he's coming off of a knee surgery, so they're a total mess.
Does that buy La Russa more time? The fact that they're a mess right now with all the injuries.
I don't know what Jerry Reindorf's threshold of pain will be with Tony La Russa.
Mm-hmm.
I think he regrets having fired La Russa. The whole story.
Yeah,
he let his new general manager, who came out of the radio booth, Ken Harrelson, fire La Russa back in 1985. La Russa had a job within about a week managing the Oakland A's for 13 or 14 years, I think it was. I don't think he wants to have a parting of the ways with La Russa, but I'm pretty confident that after this season, they'll move in a different direction, and maybe Tony will become Jerry Reindorf's, consultant or whatever, or advisor, some executive position with the White Sox.
Yeah, I would imagine that some kind of move. And we were talking about this at the beginning of the show, Stan, that managers these days are getting younger and younger and younger. And then you have Tony La Russa, who's approaching 80 years old, and he's got a clubhouse filled with early to mid-20s players. Now, let me ask you, at 70 years old, how do you think you would vibe in a clubhouse filled with a bunch of 20 to 25-year-old players?
Look, Buck Showalter's 65, 65,
mm-hmm.
and he vibes pretty good.
Fair.
I just think, remember, Tony La Russa, anything you do in life, if you don't do it for 10 or 11 years, the idea that you're going to come back and be as good as you are, especially a job that's as cerebral as managing a baseball team and making all these decisions. I'm sure he's got good baseball people there. I think Jerry Narron's with him, and Joe McEwing is, 6-7 years ago, Joe McEwing was considered an up-and-coming managerial candidate. So I don't know what they're going to do. I'm sure the vibe is not real positive under Tony out there.
Okay, well, yeah, I can't imagine, like you said, because he's been out for 10 to 11 years before he came back last year, and he's that old school guy, and you mentioned how he's always Mr. Macho and was like willing to throw at other players and whatnot. I just can't imagine that he's got a finger on the pulse of the franchise right now, especially with all the injuries and everything going on. And to me, it just seems like maybe he's displaced.
He's been dealt,
right
in
now.
fairness to him, he's been dealt a tough hand. You know, he had that Eloy Jimenez injury last year where he tore his pectoral muscle like 4 days before the season started, and Luis Robert was already out, you know, for a long-term injury.
Right.
He didn't come back until late July last year. So he hasn't had the best of luck, but he's certainly that team, you know, and they must love Grandal as a catcher, you know, defensively. He does very little for me overall, Grandal. I don't like him.
The offensive numbers have always been kind of waning out
just
for him.
Putrid. Other than the 1 year with San Diego, he's been putrid.
Now, Stan, let's move back to the Orioles here and somebody who hasn't been putrid, and that's Jorge Lopez, who has been nothing short of outstanding this year. He's 3-3. He's got 13 saves, which I believe is top 6 in the American League. A sparkling 0.75 ERA and 0.81 WHIP in 36 games. I keep hearing he's 29 years old and he's struggled until this year. The Orioles should trade him while his value is at its highest. And I keep preaching relievers have a longer shelf life than any other player because they play less. Now, they may pitch more frequently than a starter, but they go 1, maybe 2 innings at a time, and they all pitch. The good ones pitch to the late 30s, early 40s. Do you agree that the Orioles should trade Jorge Lopez this year while his value is at its highest? I'm inclined to think that they should just keep him.
There's a lot on both sides of that. You know, one of the things, if you ever play fantasy baseball, you'll realize one thing though, that this year's best closers, a lot of times within 2 years, they're nowhere on the board. Okay. The durability of closers is, you know, and the consistency of closers can be a real wild card. So when you ask, would you trade them? Show me what the offer is.
Right.
You know, if I'm getting a AAA, if I'm getting a team, let's just say, I think the Red Sox have figured out their bullpen with Tanner Holt moving into the closer's role and sort of being the new Jonathan Papelbon there. And I'm talking about a prospect that was a top-rated starter who then moved to be the closer and never went back to starting again. But but let's just use them as an example. If they were really making a charge, maybe not at first place, but that they were going to get the number 1 wild card in the American League, which is still very possible for them. And they were really having trouble with the bullpen, and they wanted to offer you a top AAA prospect who you thought was really close. And I'm talking about only pitching here, okay? A top prospect that you think you can slot in as eventually a number 2 or 3 starter, and you get something else, international money, or maybe a 19-year-old starter that's at A-ball that the Red Sox say, well, we can give him up because he's not coming up for 3 or 4 years. And you make a deal like that for Jorge Lopez, I might be all in on that. But the team's got to really blow me away to pry him away because, A, he's not expensive right now, and he really just seems to be touching. He looks like he's so confident right now that he is moving into that artiste role where he really understands that the difference when a hitter's only facing him one time, he has all the leverage in the world.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
He goes out there and he just attacks hitters, Stan. And it's almost like he's daring them to hit him because he knows that they can't. And he's been so damn good this year. And I'm with you, Stan. I'm not trading him unless I'm getting a major league ready quality starting pitcher in return. And I'm looking at when the Orioles traded Eduardo Rodriguez to the Red Sox for Andrew Miller. I need a guy who's going to come out there and pitch to about a 3.5 ERA and win 15+ games for me. That's the kind of pitcher that I want to return.
That's a good example. But today, keep in mind with what Lopez makes, and how inexpensive he is right now.
Yeah.
That adds to his value too. So I'd have to get that's a good comp in terms of Eduardo Rodriguez, because he was really just on the verge of being major league ready. I'd have to get two pieces like that. I'd have to get a second pitcher that you squeeze out of them, or maybe a really a Latin prospect that Kobe Perez knows about and Mike know about, and they say, hey, they're willing to throw this in, because that's how you turn your organization. When you make trades, you better the organization for the next 5 to 7 years, not just 1 or 2 years, but you're dealing with a team that's got a totally different motivation in that they are playing for this year, trying to get better so they can beat the Yankees. That's a good comp, though. The Eduardo Rodriguez for Andrew Miller.
And I'll tell you, Stan, that I trust Mike Elias to get the most out of any kind of trade that he's going to put forth. I look at the Andrew Cashner trade in 2019. One of those players that he got in return was Elio Prado, who's hitting over 300 at Delmarva right now. So I look at the return that we got the Orioles got for Dylan Bundy and for Alex Cobb, and you name the player, the Orioles got a solid return on that. I trust in Mike Elias. If he does make the trade, it's going to be the best possible trade that he could have gotten.
The best thing that Mike Elias has, he's got the ability to walk away from it and say, hey, I got Jorge Lopez for another 2 years, and I don't really have to pay him an awful lot.
Right.
So I'll fold up my tent. You go find the closer somewhere else as good as Jorge Lopez,
Exactly. Now, just a few more minutes here with Stan the Fan, Charles, on a beautiful Saturday in Baltimore on the bat-around. Stan, Dean Kremer and Tyler Wells are forming a formidable 1-2 punch in the rotation. How big is it for the Orioles to have these guys going back-to-back? And if they continue this, does it alter the Orioles' plans for free agency in the offseason with regards to pitching when you think about the fact that you're going to have Wells, you're going to have Kremer, you're going to have Grayson Rodriguez in that rotation next year? Does it alter what they try to do as far as going out and getting starting pitching in the offseason?
Yeah, no, I don't think it alters it at all. I don't think the Orioles were going to end up being huge players in the free agent market. They're not going to go out and pay, $20 million for a pitcher, the kind of pitcher you'd want.
Right.
But there's no reason that next year they could not add somebody that's actually better than Jordan Lyles for about Jordan Lyles' price tag. There's literally no reason that they couldn't pick up a pitcher and pay like $9 million for 2 years on somebody that their analytics say that they can fix a little bit. So I think that they will definitely get at least one more pitcher. Again, I don't know what their thinking is on, at the end of the day, I love the concept of what they did with Jordan Lyles, and he is paying off in terms of most of the time he's giving you 6 to 7 innings. But at the end of the day, you look at his stats and there's still 5 ERA,
right.
And he's just not, but would I take him back on one more year with where the Orioles are right now? Yes, I would definitely take him for one more year,
Well, yeah.
And if they came back to me and said, Stan, we just announced that we're bringing Jordan Lyles back for 2 years, I wouldn't have any major problem with that. I think he's an okay major league pitcher, and on a young staff, he does take some pressure off. But you do hope to have John Means back at some point next year. Hopefully by late May or June.
Apparently, he's progressing very well.
What's that?
Apparently, he's progressing very well.
Good. The problem with John is I've never bought into him as a quality starter that was going to give you potentially. I know everything's changed now since the pandemic, where you used to want your starter to give you 190 to 200 innings. That mark for the next 2 or 3 years might be more like 150.
Right.
But nothing John Means has done has shown me that, yeah, I can count on him for 150 innings.
I'll tell you what, though, if they don't need him to be the ace, he has a spot in this rotation where he can be a very effective,
got a spot in the rotation.
Effective
but
big league
again,
pitcher.
what's to say he doesn't have another injury?
Right, exactly.
Because he's had a prolonged absence in each of his seasons.
Every year. You're absolutely right. Now, before we let you go, Matt Harvey, 6 shutout innings for Aberdeen. His suspension is up on Tuesday. I imagine he'll go to Norfolk's rotation before the Orioles bring him along, but I think it's only a matter of time before he's in this Orioles rotation. People talk about how bad his numbers were last year, but they don't talk about the fact that in 10 second-half starts last year, he was 3-4 with a 4.18 ERA, and that version of Matt Harvey can 100% help the Orioles this year. What impact do you see Matt Harvey having on the Orioles this season?
I wouldn't say he's going to have an impact. I would say he is definitely, as this season has worked out, and now that we know that Kyle Bradish is on the IL for at least 15 days with a shoulder strain, he's definitely going to factor in as a starting pitcher with the Orioles, through the second half of the season.
And it goes to show.
I would imagine he would probably make 2 more minor league starts. And and again, I'm not expecting him to have shutout performances at AAA, but if they're reasonable, I think he'll be up just sort of before the All-Star break.
Yeah, and you've mentioned on the show time and time again how you were in spring training, and the guy said that he wanted to have 8, 9, 10, 11 starting pitching candidates, and you see why. Because that
was Billy Epler about four years ago. I was driving around listening to a pregame show, and he's talking about on XM radio, and he's talking about how he's disappointed that he's only going into the season with 9 or 10 starting pitchers. And I'm going, what? And sure enough, like a month into that season, he was down to like 6, and all those other guys were hurt. Right. That's my one thing. Mike Elias, as the stakes get a little higher, and you really think you're close to being relevant and competitive again, you can't go in with the mistake they made this year. And I'll give them some room, and make the excuse that, okay, we didn't think we were going to compete, but they can't just try and patch it together during the season. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I'm not saying you get 10 starting pitchers that each make $10 million. You know what I'm saying? But you need them in the organization where you're getting your next arm from, and they clearly have not had answers this year. That's why we got an Austin Voth. That's why you get so many bullpen games. Now look, last night the bullpen game worked to a charm.
Yeah. No, they find themselves in quite a predicament, whether it's injuries or ineffectiveness. And when you talk about the ineffectiveness, it's Bruce Zimmerman getting sent down because he just wasn't good. And then you look at Zach Lowther, who was terrible at AAA, and they were maybe depending on him. And Alex Wells has been hurt, and Bradish. And Means.
None of the guys that they had in the organization, Bowman, Lowther, Alexander Wells, have panned out at all.
Yeah. So they definitely.
Hey, I just want to remind folks we're at K&S Associates at Falls Road. 3939 Falls Road. The car wash is going on here, and will be going on to 1 o'clock. Car washes are just $15, with all the proceeds going to the Hamden Family Center. Okay?
Absolutely. Stan, what do you have coming up this week?
Luke Jackson's going to be doing the Zoom with me. It's just going to on Monday. Ross Grimsley has to do some travel out to the West Coast. So Luke and I will just be talking baseball amongst ourselves. And then Thursday, we've got Gary Stein and I have D.P. Smith III, who has just come out with a book on Johnny Unitas called The Golden Arm Gentleman. And that's what we've got this week.
All right. Sounds excellent, Stan. We'll be sure to tune in, and we will talk. Oh, we don't have the bat around Stan for the next 2 weeks because of the move.
Yep. We're in the process of moving the whole office, the kit and caboodle, out to Baltimore County.
Absolutely. Yep. So Stan, we will be talking to you on Saturday, July 16th, the day before the Major League Draft. So so bone up on your prospects, all right?
All right. Yep.
All right. Have a great weekend.
All right. Talk to you guys.
See you. And that was Stan the Fan Charles, who has two great shows for you every week. Every Monday night, Stan and former Orioles pitcher Ross Grimsley visit with a different guest from the world of baseball. And every Thursday night, Stan and Gary Stein chat with a different newsmaker from the world of sports. It was a busy week for Stan this week. He and Ross hosted the Major League Baseball Roundtable Show, and he and Gary chatted with Johns Hopkins legend Kyle Harrison about his new role with the PLL as they return to Homewood Field. And he also called up with Maryland Sports Executive Director Terry Hasseltine. Find those shows under the videos tab at facebook.com/PressBoxSports or at PressBoxOnline.com/video. Ross is off this week, so Stan and Luke Jackson are back for a Major League Roundtable on Monday. And then Stan and Gary Stein will have D.P. Smith III with his new Johnny Unitas book on the show on Thursday. Tune in for that and more with Stan. Sounding off with Zach Goodman. We have like 3 minutes to do sounding off, but Zach's got a good one for you today.
I'll make it quick. Look, I've talked about it before in sounding off and before on the show that I've always been a bit perplexed by the way the Angels operate. They are not, I would say, not the most traditional team in a lot of senses. And they did something this week. They sent down Reed Detmers, a guy they took in the first round a few years ago in the draft, a guy that has a lot of potential to be a really good starting pitcher one day. And he's a guy who threw a no-hitter this year, earlier in May. He'd been pitching kind of up and down throughout the year. He hasn't been great. His ERA is .466. He had a 1.103 whip, which is actually pretty good.
It's really good.
His numbers overall, he wasn't striking out a ton of guys. He was walking maybe more than he should be. But overall, the numbers are pretty serviceable for a guy that is pitching for the Angels, because we know the Angels have had some pitching struggles. And yeah, they've got Ohtani. They've got some other guys who have pitched pretty well in their rotation this year who have been a lot better than Reed Detmers has been to this point. But I think I'm trying to tie this back to the Orioles in a way, because I'd like to see the Orioles, instead of optioning these guys as soon as they start to fail and flounder a little bit, to let them struggle and let them work out things at the major league level. I think it's a mistake to option a guy like Reed Detmers, especially when you're the Angels and you don't really have that many great options. Otherwise, that you're going to bring up and are going to pitch, that drastically better than Reed Detmers is doing. I think it's important to let your prospects work through things at the major league level, especially a guy who threw a no-hitter this year.
They're doing it with Kyle Bradish.
And they're doing it with Kyle Bradish, and I want to see that continue. I think that teams should let these guys work these things out, because he threw a no-hitter, so clearly the guy's got the talent to work at the major league level, and the numbers really weren't that bad. So I think this was a bit of an overreaction by the Angels, and if they have someone better, if they went out and made a trade and they got a number 2 or a number 3 or even a number 1 starter and said that's who we're replacing Reed Detmers with, I think it'd make more sense. But if you're going to replace him with some guy that we don't know, a lot about, or maybe he hasn't been all that successful, why not just let Reed Detmers keep pitching and work through his struggles? That's my point.
No, yeah, and I get that. And his last 2 starts, he's given up 9 runs in 8 2/3
That's
innings,
not good,
right?
No.
But prior to that, he had 3 scoreless outings in his previous 5 starts. But you look at the numbers a little bit closer, and he threw 78 pitches in 4 2/3 innings on May 4th, 108 pitches on that May 10th start with the no-hitter in 9 innings. Then he goes 61 pitches in 3 2/3 on May 17th. 86 pitches in 4 1/3 on June 2nd. 85 pitches in 4 1/3 on June 8th. 83 pitches in 3 2/3 on July 15th.
Right.
And then 95 pitches in 5 innings on June 21st.
As I said, too many walks at the moment.
Look, and maybe they're trying to salvage their season because they got off to such a hot start. They have this talent in their lineup. They want to do everything they can. But if you're not replacing him with somebody better...
Right, all right. And maybe they will, but it remains to be seen.
And they view themselves in a different light than the Orioles do. The Orioles are viewing themselves as a team that's coming out of a rebuild, and they're still trying to figure things out, and they want to know what they have in Kyle Bradish.
Sure.
The Angels are never going to be in a rebuild because they have Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. Right? They're never going to be in a rebuild, so they're viewing themselves as maybe he's not helping us win ball games right now, so we got to figure out if we have somebody else who can help us. Even still, I agree with your take because the guy has the stuff. He's a former first-round pick. He threw a no-hitter last month. And now he's down at the minor leagues because he's had 2 bad starts in a row.
Right.
It's
maybe they just want to work on his efficiency. I get it. I see the upside in that. But then again, you're ruining a guy's confidence by putting him in AAA. I don't love the move by the Angels.
Yeah, no, a lot of things that the Angels do with their pitching is befuddling and head-scratching for sure. We got to catch our first break. When we come back from ESPN, baseball insider Kiley McDaniel will join us to talk Orioles prospects and the draft. That and more next on the Batter Round.
Come in for Glory Burgers, Glory Wings. There's glory for everyone at Glory Days Grill. Enjoy our award-winning burgers, ribs, and wings, or try our fresh salads, hand-cut salmon, or our scrumptious sandwiches. Yum! Come in for our daily specials every weekday, like $7.99 burgers on Mondays and $6.99 nachos on Thursdays. Dine in and let us serve you, or order online at glorydaysgrill.com and take it home. Visit us at glorydaysgrill.com for a location near you. Glory Days Grill, great food, good sports.
I'm Griffin Bass, and I have the extraordinary, mind-blowing, and life-affirming pleasure of being the new producer for the absolute funniest, smartest, and most handsome sports host in all of Baltimore. Wait a second, Glenn, I'm working for you, not Jeremy Kahn. If you're not listening to Glenn Clark Radio, here's what you're missing.
He's Coach Kevin Willard.
Glenn, thanks for having me.
Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Rashad Bateman.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
He is outfielder Cedric Mullins.
Thank you guys for having me.
Trey Mancini.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Mr. Marcus Williams, who's now with us.
Man, appreciate it. Happy to be on.
Ravens kicker Justin Tucker.
Thanks for having me.
Adley Rutschman.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
John Angelos.
Thanks a lot. Good to be with you.
Ryan Mountcastle.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Marlon Humphrey.
Thank you.
Talia Tungavailoa.
Thank you guys for having me.
He is J.K. Dobbins.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
The great Ray Lewis.
Always good to be on.
He is Mr. Cal Ripken Jr.
Good chatting with you.
Watch Glenn Clark Radio at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline and listen live at PressBoxOnline.com/radio or anytime on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or anywhere you get your podcasts.
The Toyota Tacoma comes in a wide range of models and trim lines. You can choose the perfect Toyota to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today.
Stan the Fan here, welcoming back one of my favorite sponsors, the Costas Inn. And everybody around Baltimore knows the Costas Inn is a great place to go and grab crabs, steaks, salads, soups, whatever's on your mind to eat in person. But did you know that the Costas Inn has upped their game? They are now one of the premier takeout places in Baltimore. Give them a call now to order your food, 410-477-1975. That's the Costas Inn, over 4100 North Point Boulevard.
Sports fans, the wait is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. This is your chance to win big right in your own backyard. Bet on every sport with self-service kiosks and watch all of the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
We are back live here on the Bat-Around on another beautiful Saturday in Baltimore. I want to remind you that today's show, the first hour, has been brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland, which is the best place to be for the playoffs and all of your upcoming big events. Bet on every sport with 61 self-service kiosks open 24/7 and watch all the action from the best seat in the house. You can watch and bet on UFC 276 next Saturday night in the FanDuel Sportsbook, so make sure you reserve your spot today by emailing events@sportssocialmd.com. That's events@sportssocialmd.com. Really excited to talk to our next guest from ESPN. He is a baseball insider. He is Kiley McDaniel, and he's live with us now on the Bat-Around. Kiley, it's Paul, it's Zach. Good morning. Thanks for joining us today.
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, we are thrilled to have you on. And the Orioles, they have a lot of prospects that are tearing the cover off the ball, none bigger than Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westburg, who have hit the ground running at AAA. Gunnar Henderson already has as many walks this year in 62 games as he had in 105 last year. More walks than strikeouts in both AA and AAA this season. Has yet to face a pitcher in either league that is younger than him, and he's younger than the next youngest player in AAA by 9 months. Do the Orioles have a superstar on their hands in Gunnar Henderson?
Yeah, I mean, they might. I remember seeing him going back to his junior year of high school, and he always looked like a guy that, checked all the boxes, which, you could argue is as many as, 20 hitters in any high school class at any given time. And then as you get closer to the draft, you're like, all right, there's like 10, 12, maybe 15 guys that can do it. And then they hit pro ball, and it's like, all right, it's like 8, maybe 7 guys. And then second or third year pro ball, it's like, all right, there's like 3 dudes that might do it. And he's still there standing, even as the 42nd overall pick. And I think he was seen as like a, 30 to 40 overall kind of talent. Being that age, essentially being the age of a college junior and putting up, like you're saying, like either even to more walks and strikeouts, plate discipline in the upper levels doesn't really happen. So, and these numbers also stabilize pretty quickly. Like it usually takes about roughly how many plate appearances he's had in AAA, 75 plate appearances. That's roughly how long it takes to stabilize. So like that is how good he is right now. Now that could change going forward. The league could adjust to him. Maybe he's one of those guys that just tears apart AAA and then goes to the big leagues and is significantly worse and then has to, ride that shuttle back and forth, trying to sort of dial that in. So I wouldn't hang superstar on him, but I will say this is not for ESPN.com yet, but I actually went through last night and redid my top 100 because so many guys have graduated, and I did an article recently saying who's the top prospect in the minors, and he was probably the best guy that I didn't mention in the 6 or 8 guys that were in that conversation, and right now I've got him at 13th.
Wow.
So I mean, he's right there with Robert Hassel, Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman, Grayson Rodriguez is just ahead of him. Lawler and Meyer, the 2 best players from last year's draft. Like he's in that conversation with those sorts of guys, just behind that sort of Volpe, Rutschman, Francisco Alvarez, Corbin Carroll, Daniel Spino, all those dudes that everyone thinks are the best. He's like one notch behind them. And I think I had him like 70 or 80 going into the year. So that kind of shows you like how much progress he's made in just this part of the season.
Well, actually, you have him on quite a meteoric rise. I was looking at your February rankings. You had him ranked 96th on the top 100 behind teammates Adley Rutschman, Grayson Rodriguez, Colton Cowser, and DL Hall. Now you're saying that you had him ranked as high as 13th when you were going through last night. Now you pair him with Jordan Westburg. Westburg has mashed since getting to Norfolk. He went 5 for 6 last night. He leads the entire organization with 14 home runs. He's hitting over 400 at AAA. How far is he behind the top 100 prospects list? Because he hasn't been on any top 100 prospect list that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, if you redid one from top to bottom right now, he would have to be on it, which, again, I went through that process last night. It just happened to be right before we talked, and I think I ended up with him in the 70s somewhere.
Okay.
I've kind of consistently been the highest guy on him. I think in the draft I had him about 10 spots higher than anybody else did, and the reason was not just because of the player that he was at Mississippi State when they took him 30th overall, is because like he didn't do showcase baseball. He didn't have a ton of offers. He committed to Mississippi State like late in his junior year, which is like that's when the scouts come in. Like most of these guys that go to the really big schools, they're committing as like 8th graders, freshmen, maybe sophomores, and he was way behind that curve. So and he was always big and toolsy. So you put those two things together, you're like, oh, this guy has untapped potential. He is younger than his age suggests in terms of baseball experience. And he also is like big and has upside that even if he did, do the circuit and all those sorts of things, he still had more to tap into. And then at Mississippi State, he continued getting better each year. And so I looked at that trajectory and I was like, all right, this guy's like potentially a big league shortstop with power and a good enough approach. That's probably the weakest part of his game is he swings a little too much, but he's so good. He can get by with it, and then he's gone to pro ball, and you can see his numbers. Like he's been above league average at every level, and now part of the problem that some of these college players have is they, go to A ball at 21. They're already behind the 8 ball in terms of age. Like the high school guys are sort of age appropriate, 19 or 20 for low A. He signed and went to low A as a 22-year-old right after the draft. So he's like a couple years behind those guys. He's now in AAA at 23, which is the quote correct age to be like a real prospect at a level. And as you mentioned, like he's torching it. So he also, I think, similar to Henderson, was like a little behind the 8 ball just because, like, I mean, Henderson had like, almost a 30% strikeout rate like last year in 8 ball. Like he has gotten a lot better. Westburg also like has sort of had the same numbers at every level and just keeps getting promoted to where now he is, like I said, the appropriate age at the level and continues doing that kind of performance. And the first 14 games in AAA, he's already hit 5 home runs. So you could argue he's actually ahead of that pace now. So, yeah, I mean, the question would be, is it shortstop or is it third base? Is he going to be one of those guys that gets to the big leagues and swings too much and has a bunch of strikeouts and then has to settle in? Is he more of a low-end everyday guy as opposed to an above-average everyday guy? Like, that's the question there. But, yeah, he also is taking a huge step forward, which is obviously a great move for the system because once Rutschman once he graduates, like they won't be the number one system in baseball anymore because there's so much value on that one player. But they'll still be securely in the top 5.
Well, there you go. And you mentioned Jordan Westburg's plate discipline. His on-base capabilities are lacking compared to Gunnar Henderson. Now, look, he did walk 60 times last year, which was more than Gunnar Henderson did, and he's got 29 walks this season. They're not up there with Gunnar's right now, but is his on-base capabilities still good enough?
Yeah, I think he'll be one of those 240, 250 type hitters that can get on base at, sort of a league average level, whatever that is, 330 for 340 right now. And then he's got a chance. I mean, the tools are there to hit 20, maybe 25, And if you don't have a great defensive shortstop, you can play shortstop. If you have like a plus defensive shortstop, then you slide him over to third base. And that's, like I said, like that's at least a low end everyday guy, probably more than that, depending exactly on how that plate discipline translates. Because I think he is the type of player, even more than Gunnar Henderson has shown this year, the kind of guy that's like looking for a ball to hit. And so sometimes, like I said, like those guys they don't have any pushback in terms of having trouble and having to make adjustments until they get to the big leagues because they're so physically talented. Like we've seen, some guys like Acuna come up, have trouble for a month and they figure it out. And some guys like Luis Robert are not quite as good as you thought they would be because they swing too much. And then there's guys like Lewis Brinson that are just like the entire thing falls apart. Like they just demolish AAA and they can't really play in the big leagues. And so when guys swing too much in AAA, no matter how good their numbers are, I was to point this out, like there's a chance they're totally nothing. And there's a chance that this is like a blip that you forget about a couple years from now as they've been in 5 straight All-Star games. Like both of those things are possible. Essentially depending on how much tools, like how much upside there is, how special they are. And so you can see why, Acuna is at one end of the spectrum and then somebody like Lewis Brinson can be at the other end. But like Lewis Brinson was a top 10 prospect in baseball at one point. So it's not the easiest thing to predict. And
even within the Orioles, all you have to do is look at a guy like DJ Stewart, his former first-round pick, who's hitting .350 at AAA right now. But when he gets to the big leagues, he can't hit his weight. The gap is just so big between AAA and the majors, and I think you're exactly right when it comes to stuff like that. Now, with Jordan Westburg and Gunnar Henderson, the Orioles have huge offensive holes at second base, third base, and shortstop, for that matter, in their lineup. Now, Jorge Mateo's defense has been so good that he's not going anywhere. Is there a chance that we see either or both of these players in the big leagues at some point this season?
Certainly a chance. I think the best guide would be Adley Rutschman, obviously, as the franchise player who I think was big league ready last year. I mean, it's obviously like sort of an amorphous concept. Like, what does big league ready mean? Because a guy could be demolishing AAA, come up and be terrible. Was he ready? Probably not. But you didn't know that he's demolishing AAA. What are you supposed to do?
Right.
So at that point, like he very reasonably could have come up last year, probably would have been fine, and then came up the sort of magic amount of days into this year's season. And that was, somewhat cynically like a play to get an extra year of service time. So you use that as a guide. Like, this is the franchise guy. This is the best prospect in baseball. And they did that to him. Do you think they will then do that with Westburg and Henderson, who like probably weren't expected to get to AAA this quickly and be this good? Could they say the same things I'm saying? Like, well, we don't know if this guy's going to immediately hit in the big leagues, and we get extra year of service if we can just like let him finish the year at AAA, and they'll probably, either like, get a knock, like miss 3 weeks with like, some sort of hamstring thing, or have a bad streak for a month. And the thing I keep coming back to, there is a non-cynical approach to this, which is I remember talking to Reds officials doing their list like 5 or 6 years ago. And I was talking to them about some of their prior prospects, and they were, bringing up, Devin Mesoraco and Jay Bruce and all these guys. And I was walking through those guys with them, and they go, yeah, the problem with Jay Bruce, he never failed the minor leagues. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, he was so good that he like could not be challenged even by AAA pitching. And then he got to the big leagues, and the first time he ever had like an 0-15 week or whatever it was in the big leagues with like reporters asking questions after every game. And he hadn't failed on a baseball field in his entire life until he had all these people asking questions every time he was bad. And he was on like the cover of the program when you walk in the stadium and all that kind of thing. And he's like, I don't know if that affected like who he became as a big leaguer, that like that sort of changed his trajectory. But he's like, I wish we could have left him in the minors for another year and have him had a bad month in AAA and have learned to deal with that without anyone being like in his face and having to carry the team. So like there is a non-cynical way to look at this and be like, maybe these guys should just do the whole year at AAA. They seem like they're ready right now. I don't think anyone's going to be super upset if they wait, until the second half of this year. And then again, if you do the cynical approach, it would be, exactly 15 days into next year.
Right. And that brings me to my next question, which is with Henderson and Westburg, are we looking potentially at the Orioles starting left side of their infield in 2023 on opening day, or is it going to be one of those things, like you said, where they wait 15 days to call those guys up?
I mean, if they haven't come up by opening day, they're not coming up until 15 days in. And the good news is that's not that much time.
Right.
But yeah, the bad news is it's like not a great commentary on where we are with baseball right now.
Right.
And I would also throw in Kobe Mayo, who's maybe a year, 2 years behind them. He could also get thrown into that infield and continue to solve problems. As I'm guessing Jorge Mateo is not going to be the shortstop on the next Orioles playoff team, but maybe.
Now with Kobe Mayo, the power is light tower, right? But the batting average has been 230s, 240s all year. Does he have the potential to get that hit tool up where he's also hitting for average as well as the power, or is that just kind of who he is, a low average, high home run type of guy?
He is the same kind of guy as Westberg in that he is a 6'5" guy that has long arms, and I want to say Westberg's 6'3", maybe 6'4", that likes to swing. So it's never going to be he's going to hit 300 every year. He's not that kind of guy. I wouldn't pay as much attention to his average. His BABIP is down over 100 points from last year, and I would say it should maybe be down like 40 points from last year.
Okay.
So he should probably be hitting about 260 right now. His strikeout rate and walk rate and isolated power are all about the same. So I think he's meeting expectations. He's also, again, going back to the age thing I was mentioning before, he was 19 in A-ball last year. He's 20 in high A this year. He's a little young for each level.
Right.
So the performance is going to be a little below the level you think it'll be. He was almost 60% better than average last year in A-ball. And like I said, his underlying numbers are not that different. So he's only 6% above average in high A right now. So I would say he's another guy that is 250 to 260, 330 to 340 on base. He's got a chance at 30 home runs. And his question is, because he's already 6'5", like 220, is he can probably stick at third base, but he might then turn into a corner outfielder where it's, Tim and Kyle Stowers maybe are the corner outfielders on the good team. And obviously with Westberg and Henderson, like maybe you don't need him at third base, so that's not like the biggest problem in the world. But like currently he projects as a third baseman. But I think, again, because of the kind of player he is and the age that he is, I think he'll probably need the whole year at high A, maybe a little bit of double A, and then maybe the end of next year we'll have this conversation about him, and then I would say probably early 2024 is probably when it reasonably makes sense.
And I imagine that they wouldn't want to move him to first base just because he's got such that high ranking with his arm, right? He's got a almost an elite arm over there at third base. So you're saying that they probably want to keep him either at third base or in a corner outfield spot because of that arm?
Yeah, you can't rule out first base when you have guys that big. Oftentimes, even if they are fast, they don't have a good first step, and that's often what you're looking for in a corner outfielder. And if you have the hands for third base, you then have the hands for first base. I would guess they try to do right field, left field first, just because first base is typically where your very below average athletes go, and Mayo is a better athlete than that. But you also never know where 3 years from now, is he 6'5", 250? Like, sometimes those sorts of things happen where it's like, oh, okay, well, Miguel Sano was seen as a shortstop when he was 18, and now you look at him today and you're like, well, that's hilarious. I never thought he could play shortstop. It's like, well, Miguel Cabrera was a shortstop in the big leagues at one point. So,
right.
These things happen when you talk about, kids that young, kids that size. You can't just assume like, oh, he'll definitely be able to play third. It's like, yeah, if he can't, it's okay. But yeah, it's on that spectrum of, is he below average at third? Is he good enough to play left or right? Is he first? Does he end up being a DH because every spot's filled by the time he gets there? Like, all those things are on the table. It's corner guy with power, and you sort of wonder how much contact he'll make, but I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, now another infield prospect, the Orioles signed him during the international signing period, and that's Cesar Prieto, 22-year-old signing out of Cuba. All he does is hit, and he's shown more power this season. Have you gotten eyes on him? And if so, what have you seen from him, and what is his major league potential for the Orioles?
I haven't seen him this year, but I saw him, 2, maybe 3 years ago when the Cuban national team came to play college Team USA. So oftentimes that Cuban national team will be a bunch of like 28 to 30-year-old players that play in the Cuban league that are never coming over, and then a handful of like 18, 19, 20-year-olds. So like Yasmani Tomas, Cesar Prieto. There's been a number of guys that signed for like a bunch of money that are on that team, and every year you're sort of surprised, like, oh, there's another 17-year-old that's like better than all the 28-year-olds on this team, and they're beating up on our 21-year-olds. Like, oh, this is fun to watch. And then some years the team's just terrible because everybody just left, so it's all old guys. But Prieto was the best guy on the team. He was, I believe, 19, and he's now 23, so it might have been 4 years ago. And the tools are still kind of the same, where it's like second base, he's fine. He's a good runner. His sort of range and hands are fine for second, and he's a little guy, so he's moves well enough that I think he'll be fine at second base. Not a ton of power. It's 15 maybe if everything goes well, but it's like you said, it is the back control, the contact, good enough at bats where you're like, all right, maybe this guy's gonna hit 290 and get on base at 350 and hit 12 to 15. Is that an everyday guy? Like, yeah, probably. Maybe it's one of those Tommy La Stella guys where depending on what kind of season he's having, he's an everyday guy, or one of those Marwin Gonzalez type of dudes that just like plays all over the field, like, somewhere in that general area. And then he sort of obviously disappeared for a little while, and then signed and is already in AA and is, has a really good, contact rate, and like you said, he's hitting for a little more power than you would think, but he's also old for the level, which sometimes can happen. You can just sort of bully mistake pitches and hit him into homers. I haven't seen him yet this year, but I would imagine from everything I've seen on video, he's still that same guy where it is, if it really works out, it's a low and everyday guy. If it it goes just okay, then you've got like a really good utility guy that's probably fits second base, left field, DH, like that kind of area. And then if it's like terrible, he's just some guy that like bounces around the 40 man, is one of those guys that's like on waivers and that kind of thing. But he's getting pretty close to being like waiver quality already for a guy that signed for less than $1 million, which again, I was surprised when I saw how much he signed for. I was like, I'm pretty sure we know that guy can hit. Like that should be over $1 million, but it was not.
Now, you mentioned he's a little old for the league that he's in. Another guy who's a little old for the league that he's in, by no fault of his own, is Heston Kjerstad. Now, he was drafted number 2 overall by the Orioles in the 2020 draft. Comes down with myocarditis. He missed all of last year, and then he tears a hamstring in spring training. Misses the first 12 weeks of the season this year. He's finally made his professional debut, and he's hit the ground running. Now, it's Delmarva, which is low A, which is a step down for a college-drafted player. But he's hitting .405, hit his first home run last night, got on base 3 more times last night. What have you seen from Heston Kjerstad? Does he probably finish this year at high A or double A? And when can we expect a major league debut for a prospect who's already 23 years old?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the sort of standard path has been sort of blown up at this point. Mm-hmm. And everything we've seen coming back is like positive. So you kind of assume like, all right, let's like tentatively hope that like he can get back on the path that you thought he would be on and just obviously be like a couple years behind. I would imagine he probably at least goes to high A this year. Something I learned actually while working for the Orioles, but some other teams too, is the process of like switching minor league teams. If like you've been there for a month or two and like have an apartment and all that kind of thing, is like much more of a disruption than I think people realize it is. Mm-hmm. I would imagine he is not like set up in Delmarva for I'm going to be here for the next 4 months. So right. I think moving is a little more expected. But yeah, I don't think the idea is like, let's get him in pro ball for the first time in a couple of years, getting over all these things. Let's move him 3 times during the year and see what happens. Right. Now it's probably more of a plan where it's, we'll do low A, let's get your feet under you, put you at a level where we know you can succeed. We'll put you at high A. And then next year we can be more aggressive and do like a double A, triple A big leagues if everything goes perfectly. And if not, then, we'll go a little bit slower. I would imagine that's what it is. I had him 8th, 9th, I want to say, in that draft class. I didn't love the pick at the time because I thought they were dipping a little too far down to get savings. I think there were some other options that were better. Some of those other options are not doing great either. So maybe it wasn't that big of a problem. But yeah, like everything I've seen from the video of like him coming back, like everything looks about the same. And he's like, again, one of those guys that likes to swing. He'll swing and miss a little bit. He's got some power. He's obviously performed at the highest amateur level in the SEC. And so you're looking at a guy that could be a, 250, 260, enough walks and hits 20, 25 homers and plays a good right field. And sometimes those guys turn out, like JJ Bleday is another good example, where he's been a little up and down after being the 4th overall pick. And now looks like he's got a chance to be a low-end everyday guy, but we'll see. And sometimes those guys, turn into stars, and other times they turn into platoon guys. Like there's still that whole range of possibilities, and obviously it's very early with Kjerstad to say for sure what it'll be. But like it's good to see that he's back on the field, performing well, and like even his numbers, like in 10 games, already look like about what you thought they would be. Right. So yeah, I would imagine he goes to high A, and then if things continue to go well, that he'll be on that fast track to the big leagues.
All right. We have ESPN Baseball Insider Kiley McDaniel with us. Just a few more minutes with Kiley. Okay, let's move to the draft. The Orioles have the number 1 pick again this year. They've been linked to a number of players. Pundits have seemingly narrowed it down to Jackson Holliday or Drew Jones. Are those the 2 can't-miss draft prospects this year?
No.
Okay.
I hesitate to say can't miss,
right,
because I was actually just doing the exercise in my head. Like, if I'm like sitting on the set of the draft for ESPN, and they're like, Drew Jones is surprisingly fallen to 4th or whatever, like some crazy thing happens with him, and somebody's like, all right, imagine how things don't work out for him. And it's like, oh, well, he like last summer at East Coast Pro, and all these guys were on the same field, like all 4 of those high school guys that are in the mix are on the field at the same time. Mm-hmm. He wasn't obviously way better than everybody else at that thing. And I think this spring he has like separated himself, but he's like playing like low level competition, private school in Georgia. And, the tools are still good. It's not like he's not a good player, but it's like, yeah, I can imagine that guy not working out. Whereas, right, we talk about some of these guys like, Gunnar Henderson. It's like, well, he's not going to fail. Like, he'll be like a decent platoon guy at worst. Like, he's in AAA going bananas. Like, that guy is almost guaranteed to be decent. Whereas, like, Drew Jones, it's like, he's faced, a bunch of 90-plus, and he's done well. And Jackson Holliday, I essentially have like a 3-way tie for the second guy in this draft. I have Tamar Johnson, second baseman out of the Atlanta area, high schooler, Elijah Green, center fielder at IMG Academy in Florida, and Jackson Holliday, son of Matt Holliday, high school shortstop at Oklahoma. I've been going back and forth, like flipping those 3 guys right behind Drew Jones. And I would even throw in Cam Collier, the junior college third baseman, who was a high school player out of Georgia, but then went to a junior college and is a year younger than all those guys. I think those 5 guys have separated themselves as being better than everybody else. I think Drew is at 1. I think Collier is probably at 5. And then I think Johnson, Green, Holliday, 2, 3, 4 are all right there. I wouldn't say can't miss with anybody, but I think for context, if I were to put them all in the top 100, I think Collier would be about 50th, Drew would be like 15th or 20th, and then those 3 guys in the middle would all be in like the 20 to 45 range, which is like obviously like a very healthy, like if you take that guy number 1 overall and immediately goes in the top half of a top 100, you're pretty excited about that.
Right.
Now it sounds like the Orioles are considering either Brooks Lee or Jacob Berry as like the college option in that mix. I have those guys like much further down, like outside of a top 100, maybe down to 150. I would not be excited about those guys. And for that reason, I think they're looking at those guys similarly to how I do. And I don't think they can justify taking them that high. And I don't think Collier is like a real option up there. So that then gives you the 4 high school guys. And I think the sort of more recent buzz has been, it's either Drew Jones at 1 for full freight or, close to full slot, or it's Tamar Johnson, not because he's necessarily by far the best out of those 3 other guys. I think he's the best of those 3. I have him second on my board. But because if he doesn't go 1, he's probably going to go 6 or 7. And if you've been following the draft closely, in 2012, when Michael Elias was running the draft for Houston, they ended up taking Carlos Correa number 1 overall. In retrospect, that was the right pick. But at the time, they basically reached out to 4 or 5 players and said, we think you're all basically the same. Who will take the lowest price? We will draft that player. And Carlos Correa came in like $200,000 cheaper than Max Fried, or else they were going to take Max Fried. So they ended up being correct, and the reason they took him is because he wasn't going to go until 6 or 7 if he didn't go first. Right. So he was offering the biggest discount because that's how the sort of market forces had it. Right now, Tamar Johnson, who I think is the second best player in the draft, would be offering the biggest discount for the same reason, because for whatever reason, 2 through 5 don't seem interested in taking him, and I think he'd either go 6 or 7. So I think those are probably the 2 most likely options, because I think Drew Jones is that's the full freight option, and then Tamar Johnson is the cut rate option, and then all the other guys would sign for 10% less than Drew, and I think they have him behind him, and I think the college options have sort of fallen to secondary. So I've been told by Orioles sources they're considering exactly 5 players, and that is still true right now. I don't know exactly who the 5 players are, but I think realistically speaking, there's going to be 2 options, the full freight and the cut rate. And I think it's Drew Jones and Tamar Johnson. And that's also 1 and 2 on my board. And I think it'll be a $2 million gap between the 2 of them. So I think those are like pretty compelling choices, where either one being the choice, and that still could not be reality. I think that is the most likely outcome. Both of those are good options. Whereas if they would have picked Jacob Berry number 1, I would have gone on TV and been like, this is a mistake. Like they're going 8 spots down when they have like potential perennial all-star high school players up here. Like that's the reason you get these picks, is to take those kinds of guys. And you got 4 of them this year. You have to take one of them. And so I think their approach is right now is also driving with probably pretty close to what I would be doing.
Right, and if we're reading the tea leaves from what the Orioles have done, you would think that they'd probably go with the $2 million savings to have more money for the rest of the draft. That's what they tend to do. That's what they did with Kjerstad. That's what they did with Colton Cowser. So do you anticipate that the likely move is going to be Tamar Johnson for the Orioles?
Well, and also in 2019, they took Adley Rutschman as the consensus best player.
Right.
So they've proven they can do both. And that year, Bobby Wood Jr. was seen as a clear second, and now is, obviously pretty close. Like I think if they could have taken him at some savings, although it sounds like Kansas City kind of ran that price up since they were so eager to take him second. So I don't think there would have been savings that much. The question is, do the Orioles see Drew Jones as the clear best guy? Because I think the situation they've lined up into, that their bonus pool is so big. Hold on, I got it in front of me. It is $16.9 million. So we'll call it $17 million. The problem they have right now is this draft is one where there's not a lot of college pitching, which is what most teams kind of want in the first round. And I think a lot of teams will then take a guy that is 30, 40, 50th best, move him up, take him at 20 as a college pitcher, and say, okay, we're going to save $1 million on this pick, and then we're going to go shopping for a high school pitcher with our second pick, and going to do something that like we've seen a couple teams do in the past, where they spend more money on their second pick than on their first pick, but you take the college guy with the first one because they'll be gone by the second one, whereas the high school pitcher, you can float them down the board with big demands because they can threaten to go to college and not sign. So teams are scared of taking them if they don't have the deal in place. That is, I think, maybe half of the first round will be significant savings to then spend it in the second or third round. And the reason I bring all this up is the Orioles have all this money. They got $17 million. They're not going to get a $5 million player to get to their second pick. So they're going to be spending, $2-3 million at a time those next couple picks. It's going to take a while to spend $17 million if you chop at the first pick. You're then going to have like almost $10 million, which means $2 to $3 million for 4 or 5 picks in a row. Can you get a $2 million player to the 5th round? Like, I'm not even sure you can. Is there one? And if we've noticed, we'll go back and look through the Orioles draft. The last guy they spend 7 figures on, Creed Willems, non-consensus guy, hasn't gone that great so far. Carter Baumler, non-consensus guy, had TJ. Like, the last guy you spend the money on is usually not that good. It's usually the guy that only you like and nobody else does, which is not a great indicator of how good they're going to be. So if you chop at the first pick because you're like, Drew Jones, Tamar Johnson, about the same. We think Drew's a little bit better, but like for $2 million, we'll take Tamar. That money then goes to like the 5th round with whoever's left over. That guy's not going to be very good.
Right.
And so because they have so much money and so many players are going to get pushed to the second or third round and a bunch of college players are going to get pushed up into the first round for savings, you then have to look at, and I pointed this out in my last mock draft, the Orioles have to then think, who is the sixth best $2 million player that we can actually get? And that guy's not very good. Is that a reason to take a lesser talent? And so then it comes back to, is Drew Jones better at all? Because it's not really $2 million anymore that you're saving. It's like $2 million in the fifth round with whoever's left, and that's not a real $2 million anymore. And I think if it's, well, who's better? I mean, Drew Jones looks like a model of who you want the number one overall pick to be. And for better or worse, I think the second best player in the draft. Tamar Johnson is a 5'8" high school second baseman. It's really easy to imagine how that doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Whereas Drew Jones, like, he could be Fernando Tatis Jr. or Juan Soto or Acuna. Like, he looks the way you want them to look at this age. And so those things are on the table. And Tamar Johnson could be Rafael Devers. Like, he could be Jose Ramirez. Like, that's on the table. But he doesn't necessarily have those markers that make you feel good that at 25 he will be more athletic than he is right now. Whereas Drew Jones does have all those things. So I think it then comes down to, again, I had to like explain the whole metagame of how to spend money in the draft. The Orioles almost have so much money, I think they're most likely to just take who the best player is, regardless of price. And I think they're going to come down on Drew Jones with that. So I think it's more likely than not that they take him, because the alternative is to take a leftover high school pitcher that nobody else liked, which doesn't seem like a good way to save that money.
Oh, that's excellent insight into how the draft process works. I didn't know that was what all those considerations went into how you spend the money on your first player. So that's phenomenal stuff there, Kylie. We really appreciate that. Now, I have one last question for you before we let you go, and that's about Kumar Rocker. 1.80 ERA in 4 starts for Tri-City in the Independent League with 25 strikeouts in 15 innings pitched. They were saying that, a couple of years ago, we're talking about Kumar Rocker being the number 1 pick in the draft. He slid to, 10th or 11th last year with the Mets and then didn't sign. Where do you see him going in this year's draft, and what is his major league potential?
The problem is, so he's pitching, essentially showing the same kind of stuff he showed at Vanderbilt, and is, pitching effectively, and all that stuff seems to be back to normal. So I think a lot of the sort of more casual fan watching this is like, oh, okay, well, the Mets didn't take him because they thought his medical was bad and he was going to get hurt, and like he's fine. So like he should go 10th again, like where he went. And that's not going to happen unless he shares his medicals, because the thing that freaked out the Mets is something in his arm that will project his health in the future. It's not current. And this happens all the time. Like there are guys that, remember Barrett Laux was drafted 3rd overall. The D-backs were like, what's in your arm in this medical is a disaster. We're not signing you. We didn't know this was the case. We'll just we'll take the pick next year, which I believe was Archie Bradley. And we'll let you go. And then like, he was like never the same. Like they actually saw the future, was like, oh, this guy's going to get hurt and not be the same, and we don't want to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, teams will whack a guy on the medical and say like, he's not for us. And sometimes they become the 10th best prospect in baseball the next year. I'm thinking a very specific guy where multiple teams had him off the board because they thought his arm was going to explode, and then it didn't. And so Kumar Rocker, only one team has seen it. The other 29, I don't think, we don't know yet, but that has not been shared to the other 29 teams yet. Mm-hmm. So the thing that made the Mets freak out about Rocker and say, we're not signing him, not for any price or, whatever would be available, we're not doing it. 29 teams haven't seen it yet. And so it doesn't really matter if he's like throwing 96, because like he did that last year and like the Mets freaked out because of the thing that they saw projecting his health into the future. And so until we see it, a team has to dramatically lower their expectations of what he can be. And I think what some teams are looking at, I've pitched this sort of idea as what I'm thinking about it as to some teams, and they're like, yeah, it's like kind of how we're thinking about it until we see the medical, and maybe we won't before the draft, which is send him straight to AA, put him in the bullpen, have him throw 2-3 innings at a time, and try to get into the big leagues as soon as possible. Because if you see the medical and you're also worried that like whatever the Mets saw, I don't want to speculate what it might be, that like if he ever gets hurt, maybe he won't pitch again. Like whatever the conclusion was from that, we need to get that in the big leagues as soon as possible. And so you're just essentially like picking a reliever at this point, regardless of whether he can start or relieve. It's the sort of volatility that comes with a reliever. And so you then look at like, Ben Joyce and some of these other guys that will go relatively high. Somebody might take them in the late first round. Somebody might take them in the comp round. It'll be savings at that level. And then once you get to like the middle of the second round, picks 40 to 60, I think that's probably a round slot, like $1.5 million. I think that's probably about expectations. And then once you get to like the late second or third, then it's like, oh, somebody promised him $2.5 million if he got to the third round. They're trying to get him down there. But if he doesn't share his medical before the draft, there's just going to be 15 teams that are going to say, no, thanks, we're not interested. And so obviously, where does he go in the draft when half the teams or 2/3 of the teams or whatever it is aren't interested? There's no way to predict it. Like he might go in the 8th round and get $3 million. I have no idea. But like until he shares the medicals, there's no way to project where he's going to go. Right. There could be a GM or an owner that says, I want Kumar Rocker to be picked on TV, take him at 24 and pay him whatever you have to pay him. Or it could be no one's going to touch him for 5 rounds because nobody has any idea what's going on in his arm. And that, I think, again, the casual fan sees him throwing 98 in independent ball. They're like, oh, he's fine. It's just like, no, if he was fine, the Mets would have just signed him. Like, that's not really the issue.
Right. Well, it's certainly going to be an interesting thing to see where he goes in this draft. He's doing all the right things for Tri-City right now, but again, like you said, it all comes down to those medicals. Kiley, what do you have coming up for ESPN?
I got a mock draft coming on either Monday or Tuesday. I'll file that this weekend. And then we've got a draft notebook, which will be, rounding up a bunch of different topics. There will be I think a very buzzy headline slapped on that, so keep an eye on it. I think it'll get picked up by some local papers of the team that I'm writing about. Final draft rankings next week. We'll have a draft guide for teams, mock 3.0 coming the week after that. And then obviously we'll have, draft recaps and all the various reviews coming up and all that sort of thing. And then right after the draft, we have 2023 rankings. We have, trade deadline content. We have top 50 updated prospects, which I guess I revealed a little bit of on here that I just did the whole thing last night. Yeah. Maybe it'll be 100. Who knows, since I've already done that.
There you go. All right. Well, we certainly appreciate your time, Kiley. Where can our listeners follow you?
On Twitter, at Kiley MCD, Kiley MCD.
All right. Sounds great. We'll be sure to get that information out there. Thank you so much for the time. Great segment as always, and we'll talk to you down the road. All right?
Yep. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
That was Kiley McDaniel, ESPN's baseball insider, coming on to talk the Orioles prospects and what they could do in this year's draft. Just want to remind you guys about the event that Stan and Glenn Clark are doing right now. It's a benefit there at for the Hamden Family Center. $15 per car wash at K&S Associates, 3939 Falls Road until 1 p.m. today. Your proceeds will all go to the Hamden Family Center, so get down there if you want a car wash for $15. Glenn Clark is wearing a hot dog Speedo, so you get to enjoy that if you head on down. We are going to catch a break. When we come back, we'll hit the payoff pitch around the league, and then we will get into Connor Newcomb from the Locked On Orioles podcast. That and more next on the Bat Around.
Are you ready, soccer fans? This summer, the English Premier League returns to Baltimore. Arsenal, Everton, square off in the Charm City match, July 16th, under the lights at M&T Bank Stadium, home of the Baltimore Ravens. This is your only opportunity to take in a Premier League match this summer in the Mid-Atlantic region. Individual and group tickets are on sale at BaltimoreRavens.com.
Come in for Glory Burgers, Glory Wings. There's glory for everyone at Glory Days Grill. Enjoy our award-winning burgers, ribs, and wings, or try our fresh salads, hand-cut salmon, or our scrumptious sandwiches. Yum! Come in for our daily specials every weekday, like $7.99 burgers on Mondays and $6.99 nachos on Thursdays. Dine in and let us serve you, or order online at GloryDaysGrill.com and take it home. Visit us at GloryDaysGrill.com for a location near you. Glory Days Grill, great food, good sports.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
The latest edition of Pressbox is available now, and it's our very first Salute the Coaches issue. On the cover, we recognize Ravens coach John Harbaugh ahead of his 15th season. Also inside, find tributes to Navy football coach Ken Niumatalolo, UMBC soccer coach Pete Caringi, Maryland soccer coach Sasho Sorovsky, and field hockey coach Missy Maharg, Mount St. Joe basketball coach Pat Clatchy, and Poly basketball coach Kendall Peace. We also honor recently retired Johns Hopkins lacrosse coach Janine Tucker and Calvert Hall baseball coach Lou Eckerl, the athletes whose lives these coaches have impacted, offering insights on what makes them special and why they've stood the test of time. Pressbox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Stan the Fan here, welcoming back one of my favorite sponsors, the Costas Inn. And everybody around Baltimore knows the Costas Inn is a great place to go and grab crabs, steaks, salads, soups, whatever's on your mind to eat in person. But did you know that the Costas Inn has upped their game? They are now one of the premier takeout places in Baltimore. Give them a call now to order your food, 410-477-1975. That's the Costas Inn over 4100 North Point Boulevard.
All right, welcome back to the Bat Around. Today's show is brought to you by Simply the Bets and Weekend at Bookie. Sports betting has come to Maryland, and we're ready to help you win some money. Tune in for Simply the Bets every Tuesday morning at 11:40. FanDuel Sportsbook General Manager Leon Twyman and VSiN's Aaron Oster join the guys every week to give you all of the info you need and offer you a few winners. And every other Thursday at 11:40, tune in for Weekend at Bookies as Andrew Stecken, Alloy Sports, Brad Kronthal help you make some money for the weekend. So come win some money with us on Simply the Bets every Tuesday and Weekend at Bookies every other Thursday, brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio. Watch at YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline. And with that over and done with, it is now time for the payoff pitch around the league. In a bullpen game, the Orioles used 5 relievers from start to finish and allowed just 1 hit to the struggling White Sox, retiring the final 19 batters they faced in a 4-1 victory. Adley Rutschman collected the 9th double and the 11th extra base hit in his last 13 games in the win. Francisco Lindor homered, doubled, and drove in 4 to back a quality start by Taijuan Walker as the Mets down the Marlins 5-3. Justin Verlander spun 7 innings of 1-run balls as strong Cy Young campaign continues, and Kyle Tucker provided all the offense with a 3-run homer to lead the Astros over the Yankees 3-1. Christian Arroyo returned to the lineup for the Red Sox and proved to be the difference maker, homering amongst his 3 hits and driving in 3 as the Red Sox stopped the surging Guardians 6-3. Jeffrey Springs struck out 9 over 6 quality innings, and Harold Ramirez played the hero, collecting a pinch hit walk-off RBI single in the 10th to push the Rays past the Pirates 4-3. Freddie Freeman reached base 3 times and scored twice in his return to Atlanta to back a 9K performance over 6 innings from Julio Urias to help the Dodgers take care of the Braves 4-1. Josh Bell collected 3 hits in the game-winning RBI in the 8th as the Nationals won a pitcher's duel over the Rangers 2-1. Zach Greinke, making his first start since May 29th, allowed just 1 run in 6 innings as the Royals shut down the A's 3-1. Herman Marquez tossed 7 2/3 innings of shutout ball despite 5 walks, and Charlie Blackmon drove in the lone run on a fielder's choice grounder in the 6th to help the Rockies to a 1-0 victory over the Twins. Dylan Bundy allowed 1 run in 6 innings to take the hard luck loss for the Twins. Alejandro Kirk went 4 for 4 with a home run and 2 RBIs, and Matt Chapman drove in 3 on a bases-clearing double and a 5-run second to power the Blue Jays past the Brewers 9-4. Kyle Hendricks struck out 6 over 7 in the 3rd shutout innings as the Cubs stifled the Cardinals 3-0. Eugenio Suarez doubled twice and reached base 4 times to help lead the Mariners over the down-and-out Angels 4-3. Mike Trout tripled and homered for the Angels in the loss. Javi Baez launched a grand slam in the 3rd inning for the Tigers, and that proved to be the difference as Detroit took care of business against Arizona 5-1. Mackenzie Gore tossed 5 shutout innings, and Austin Nola collected his first ever hit off brother Aaron, an RBI single in the 6th that proved to be the game winner in a 1-0 Padres victory. Aaron Nola took the hard luck loss with 7 innings of 1-run ball, striking out 10. And finally, Graham Ashcraft allowed 2 runs in 8 innings of work, while Nick Senzel had 2 hits and 2 RBIs as the Reds doubled up the Giants 4-2. Did not know until doing this last night that Aaron and Austin Nola were brothers.
You did not know that?
I didn't know that.
Well, they are.
I guess
they
I could.
I
guess I could have figured it out, but I didn't know until it said that it was his first ever hit and it was a game-winning RBI single.
Fascinating.
There you go.
Well, we got a bunch of games.
A lot of really low-scoring games. A lot of pitchers' duels yesterday.
A lot of games on tap for us today. Good matchup to start off the day, 105. Christian Javier versus Garrett Cole. Astros and Yankees, 2 teams performing extremely well first in their divisions. Pirates at Rays. JT Brubaker versus the veteran Corey Kluber. 110 at Tropicana Field. Your Baltimore Orioles, they'll take on the White Sox. Spencer Watkins comes off The injured list to face Lance Lynn at 210 at Guaranteed Rate Field. Adrian Sampson of the Chicago Cubs faces off against Miles Michaelis of the St. Louis Cardinals, 2:15 at Busch Stadium. The young rookie Josiah Gray and the Nationals, they'll take on Matt Bush and the Texas Rangers at 405 Globe Life Field. The lefty Jared Koenig and his Oakland A's will take on Brad Keller and the Kansas City Royals, 410 at Kauffman Stadium. Chris Bassett, the veteran Chris Bassett of the New York Mets, will take on Trevor Rogers, the lefty of the Miami Marlins, 410 at Lone Depot Park. Yusei Kikuchi for the Blue Jays takes on Corbin Burns, the hard-throwing right-hander, 410 Blue Jays at Brewers American Family Field. Red Sox look to make it 2 in a row against the Guardians, 6:10 Josh Winkowski versus the former Cy Young winner Shane Bieber, 6:10 at Progressive Field. The Reds and Mike Minor will take on the Giants and Logan Webb, 7:15 at Oracle Park. Logan Webb, incredible season, building on what he's doing last year, and looks to become, again, one of the best pitchers in the National League. Antonio Senzatella takes on Chris Archer, Rockies and Twins, 7:15 at Target Field. Dodgers and Braves, Mitchell White versus the lefty Max Fried, 7:15 at Truist Park. Again, Freddie Freeman plays his second game back in Atlanta. Logan Gilbert, the righty of the Mariners, takes on Patrick Sandoval, the lefty of the Angels, 10:07 at Angel Stadium. Alex Faedo, he'll take on the former Orioles Zach Davies as the Tigers battle the D-backs, 10:10 at Chase Field. And your final game of the night, Zach Eflin versus the lefty former Tampa Bay Ray Blake Snell as the Phillies take on the Padres, 10:10 at Petco Park.
All right, good stuff as always there, Zach.
Quick note, by the way. I just wanted to throw this in there.
Mark Aiken?
For the Phillies, it's a good... Yes.
Mark Appel.
Mark Appel. Finally has gotten called up. A guy who, if you read the book Astroball, you learn a lot about. Was picked number 1 overall, and finally, after being picked in 2013, is making his major league debut at 30 years old. He's been out of baseball multiple times. He's had injury issues, and it's a really cool story. So hopefully you get to catch that game. He might make a relief appearance tonight, and he has a really good ERA. It's like a 1.6 ERA in AAA. The first time he's really pitched well in his minor league career. So it's a really cool story. A number 1 overall pick finally makes it to the major leagues.
He was number 1 overall pick by the Astros. The Astros. But then, did he sign, or was that...
So he got picked the year before, 8th overall, and he did not sign. I'm trying to remember the team, but he didn't sign.
I think it was Cleveland, wasn't it?
Well, I don't believe it was Cleveland, but let me check. But yeah, he is one of the only number 1 overall picks who never has actually. It was the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's who took him 8th overall in 2012, and he didn't sign. First overall pick in 13, and one of the only first overall picks, along with Brady Aiken, another Astros draft pick who never made the major leagues. Now
Mark Appel's been drafted 3 times.
He has, and he was drafted in the 15th by the Tigers in 2009, but that was out of high school, obviously, and then drafted out of Stanford twice. But it's just a crazy story. I'm looking forward to seeing him on the mound if I get to catch the game at all. But it's very cool for a guy who's gone through as much as Mark Appel has. Read his Wikipedia page. This guy's been on the injury list like 15 times. It's insane.
For him to bounce back and finally make his major league debut 9 years and 10 seasons after he was drafted is it's certainly impressive, to say the least, and good for him. Even if he doesn't amount to a hill of beans, it's an accomplishment considering everything that he's gone through.
And that's the way I felt about Cody Sedlock, too, when he debuted for the Orioles a few weeks ago. Like, he's gone through a lot. A former first-round pick finally making a debut, but certainly a number 1 overall pick has even more, excitement around it. So, definitely cool.
Absolutely. Good stuff there. I wanted to mention that because I saw that from The Athletic a little bit earlier today during Stan's segment, but didn't get around to saying it. We're going to be joined momentarily by Connor Newcomb from the Locked On Orioles podcast. We didn't get an opportunity to do Orioles banter today, so I do want to talk a little bit here about Austin Hayes, Ryan Mountcastle, and Adley Rutschman, and the way these guys are swinging the bat right now. They're forming a heart of the order that's becoming quite formidable and giving you a glimpse of what we could see in the future from the next contending Orioles ball club. And it's just really special. Austin Hayes is becoming one of the best all-around players in baseball. What he's doing defensively, second in the majors with 6 outfield assists. The diving catch the other day, he hit for the cycle this week. Austin Hayes has just been having a great season and looking like that player that the Orioles took in the 3rd round 2016 that became the first player from the 2016 draft to make his major league debut, a guy who was a finalist for the National Minor League Player of the Year in 2017, hitting over 300. hitting over 30 homers, driving in over 90. He looks to be becoming that player right before our very eyes. Ryan Mountcastle, the bat's getting better every month. He's hitting the ball with authority, becoming one of the best young power hitters in the game. And then Adley Rutschman, looking like he has a really great chance to reach that ceiling that we've heard about, that really high ceiling. He's hitting over 320 in his last 13 games, and we mentioned before the 11 extra base hits in those 13 games. He is the fastest Orioles catcher to hit 7 doubles, which is a really weird out there stat, but he had the most doubles in his first 25 games of any Orioles catcher was what the actual stat was, and that was 7. So he's looking like the real deal, and everything he hits, even the outs, are hard. So the Orioles' heart of their lineup is becoming quite formidable right before our very eyes. And to talk more about that with us on the Bat Around today from the Locked On Orioles podcast, we have Connor Newcomb. Connor, are you down in the Ocean City, or are you still on the drive down?
I am on the way. I'm currently in Delaware. We are less than an hour out.
All right. Is it a family trip? You going down with buddies? Just going down for the weekend? What's going on with you?
Yeah, this is the annual family trip this week.
Nice. I haven't been down to Ocean City for a vacation in a few years now. We're going down in August, so I'm really looking forward to that. More so, what I'm looking forward to is the continued progress from this Orioles baseball team. And Connor, they are 27-25 over their last 52 games. How good is this team actually?
Yeah, I mean they're not finishing over 500. I think everyone knows. Like you look at what's happening this weekend. Like the Orioles just put together a bullpen game with 5 waiver claims and gave up 1 hit. Right. I mean, they're starting Spencer Watkins tonight. It's not going to keep going like this. And just without John Means, without Grayson Rodriguez, and who knows how long they'll be without Kyle Bradish, even though he hasn't been very good. Like, this could be an extended absence for him. The rotation is going to hurt them at some point.
I agree.
But, I mean, they're 70 wins good, I think, which, like, you need that bridge year. You can't go from 50 wins to 85 wins. You need that bridge year, and I mean, to go from 52 to 70 would be incredible.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Getting to the 70-win mark, I think, was the best that we could have hoped for. And there are people that are really buying in, and I'm like, look, the offense and the bullpen are there, but that starting rotation is going to crush them at some point. And right now, they're getting by with smoke and mirrors. They're getting quality innings out of Austin Voth in 2 bullpen games in less than a week. You have Means and Bradish on the IL. Zimmerman sent down because of the ineffectiveness. You bring Kremer up, and Kremer and Tyler Wells are forming a nice 1-2 punch, but that's really all you're getting out of this rotation. Jordan Lyles, he'll give you 6 innings of 2-run ball, and then he'll give you 4 innings of 5-run ball, so you don't really know what you're getting from him. Is there any help coming? Is Matt Harvey good enough to help this team continue to play solid baseball?
Matt Harvey's going to pitch in this rotation at some point this year. I mean, I'm pretty certain of it.
Yeah.
Especially, depending on how long this Bruce Zimmerman situation takes, because the plan is not for Bruce to, spend the rest of the year in AAA. The plan is for Bruce by the All-Star break, the latest, to be back in the big leagues, I think. And, he's down in AAA, so he can take more time in between his starts, and he can work on the new delivery, the new set position. And, in his first AAA outing, he gave up 5 runs in his first inning, and then he went 4 scoreless after that and struck out 6. So he figured out something at least a little better in that first outing in AAA, and he'll be back, so that'll help. But, I mean, Matt Harvey is a better option than Spencer Watkins. Down the line, he's a better option than Austin Voth. I mean, he gave the O's some solid innings eating last year. I mean, he did last year what Jordan Lyles has kind of done so far this year. I think Lyles may have been a little bit better than Harvey was last year, but they're going to need him, and, the suspension is going to be up soon. He'll go to AAA, probably make 5 or 6 starts there, and then, end of July, we might see Matt Harvey back as well. But in terms of reinforcements, I mean, I really don't think we're going to see Grayson Rodriguez in the big leagues this year, even if he's healthy and comes back in September.
Me either.
And I think we're going to see DL Hall, but I don't think it's going to be he can start and give us 6 innings. I think you could see DL Hall in a situation where he starts and pitches 3 innings, and then Spencer Watkins or Austin Voth or, someone like that, Keegan Aiken pitches 3 innings, and then they go to the end of the bullpen. So in terms of help, it's Matt Harvey. It's hopefully Zimmerman figuring it out and coming back. because other than that, I mean, the only other guy I could say is, at some point here, as long as the injury doesn't get worse, Alexander Wells is going to start to rehab and get himself back. He's really the only other guy. Remember, he was only pitching out of the bullpen this year before he got injured, so it's not a lot of help coming out of it.
Right, and Matt Harvey, people just look at the overall numbers from last year, and he had that really bad stretch there in May and June where he was just getting lit up. But in the second half of the season, he made 10 starts. He went 3-4 and pitched to a 4.18 ERA. Now, look, that's not a world beater, but that's somebody that when your offense is clicking that can help you win ball games. And again, it's not really about wins and losses for the Orioles this year, but they're playing well enough that you want to see the good times continue, and until they get help in that rotation, it's going to be tough sledding for them at some point. Now, we mentioned Tyler Wells and Dean Kremer. Tyler Wells has been the best, most consistent starter for this team. Dean Kremer in 4 starts, he's given up 1 earned run since his first inning in his first start, and that covers 20 1/3 innings. How good of a 1-2 punch have they been, and how does this affect the Orioles moving forward if they have 2 pitchers in Wells and Kremer that will have no restrictions last year that maybe can give them quality innings?
Yeah, I mean, I think the jury's still out on both of those guys. I think Kremer more so than Wells, just because we saw Wells have success in 2 different roles over a season and a half basically at this point. So I think it's safe to buy into Tyler Wells. And there was a good piece that John Gidoli wrote in his newsletter this week, just about how Wells, basically is taking the approach of, I know my innings and my pitch count is limited this year, so he's almost tried to not strike as many guys out so he can keep his pitch count down and he can get through more innings. Now, that didn't happen this week in his last start when he reached a career high. I think he threw 95 pitches in 5 innings. But generally, he's been throwing 6 innings, 81 pitches, 78 pitches, and not a lot of strikeouts. He has said, though, that once the reins are off next year, he's going to kind of unleash that stuff we saw out of the bullpen last year even more, and it could become 6 scoreless innings with 8 strikeouts instead of 5 scoreless innings with 2. And I think, I'm fully bought into he's going to be one of those 5 guys for a while now. Dean Kremer obviously is still a lot of questions just with how bad last year was, and it's only been 4 starts. But I think the good thing with Kremer is he's made, a very visible change from last year. If you remember when he came up, everybody used to talk about his big curveball. He used to throw it for strikes all the time and drop that slow curveball in. He's basically given up on that pitch almost, and he throws his cutter a lot more. He, has more velocity on his fastball, and he basically has incorporated a changeup for the first time in terms of pitch that he'll throw more than 3 or 4 times a game. And that cutter in his last start against the White Sox, he got 10 whiffs on that pitch.
Right.
I don't know if there's another Orioles starter this year who's got 10 whiffs on 1 pitch in a start. So there's something there with Dean. And, I'm not all the way bought in that, he's a future rotation piece yet. But it's good to see it's not smoke and mirrors. He's made legitimate changes from the disaster that was last year, and they're working at it.
Yeah, and the cool thing about him is that last year he really struggled to throw strikes, and that cutter would sometimes just float over the middle of the plate and get hit a long, long way. This year he's throwing strikes, he's pitching with confidence, and he's getting a lot of chases on that cutter now. We saw it with some at-bats with Zavala and with Abreu on Thursday night where they were just chasing that cutter out of the strike zone, and they couldn't do anything with it. With Kremer, he's pitching with confidence. How important is it for a pitcher to pitch with that confidence that they can go out and they can get big league hitters out?
Yeah, I mean, we saw that confidence in 2012. He came up. He makes his first career start against the Yankees. And, pitches 6 innings, gives up 1 or 2 runs, I think. He had 6 or 7 strikeouts. I mean, he came up, and as soon as he was in the big leagues, was facing the Yankees and pitched really well. And I think that instilled a lot of confidence in him. And, he just didn't have that last year, couldn't find the strike zone, was getting behind hitters, was missing with his best pitch, which is his cutter, and didn't have confidence in throwing it in any count, so he was throwing a lot of stuff in the middle of the plate, giving up home runs. He certainly got it back, and I think, it takes confidence to kind of, get away from, that pitch like the curveball I mentioned. That was kind of the pitch that, at least defined him for a while in the minor leagues with that big breaking curveball that he could throw in any count. It takes confidence to get away from that and kind of, realize that that's not what's bringing you success, and he's definitely a different guy.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it, and we hope the good times continue there with Dean Kremer, because that's a big coup for the Orioles if that does continue. Now, something that's been huge for the Orioles is the combination of Austin Hayes, Ryan Mountcastle, Adley Rutschman. They're all in a groove right now. The heart of this lineup with those three guys in the middle of it looks very formidable. Where do you rank them amongst the American League's best amongst this division? I know that they're not up there with like the Yankees and the Blue Jays, but how good is this heart of the Orioles lineup?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's not the worst in the American League East. A lot of that has to do with how injured the Rays are right now. But if you look at the lineup that the Rays are putting out there night in and night out, I mean, it's rough in Tampa with all the injuries they've had. So I think with an injured Rays team, I mean, the Orioles clearly have the fourth best lineup, at least in the division. Now, Boston's got so much power in the middle. Toronto's ridiculous. The Yankees are ridiculous. So it's tough to compare them to the division. But if you look at some of the other teams they've played, I mean, you know, listen, the White Sox have some big names on that roster. But look, from what we've seen the last two nights, I mean, you know, Jose Abreu is not an MVP player anymore by any stretch of the imagination. And, you know, guys like Moncada have continued to struggle. And, you know, they're missing Yasmani Grandal. And, you know, I look at that White Sox team last night, and there's a reason the White Sox are, you know, have the same amount of wins as the Orioles now. But they came in as a World Series contender this year. And I look at that team, and I say, you know, they have better starting pitching than the Orioles, no doubt about it. But the rest of the Orioles roster looks at least equal to what the White Sox have. And that's, you know, a big point of confidence for O's fans, I think, moving forward.
Now, with Austin Hayes in particular, he hit the cycle this past week. The defense has been great. The arm has been phenomenal. He's been really, really consistent offensively this year. A lot of people are calling for him to be an all-star. He looks like one of the better all-around young players in the game right now. Should Austin Hayes be an all-star this year? Or is he just a solid player on a bad team?
I think he needs to be there. I mean, I think the only thing that could hurt him is just how good Jorge Lopez has been. And, I mean, Lopez is far and away the second-best reliever in the American League right now. I mean, Clay Holmes for the Yankees, we've seen it. He's literally been unhittable. But Lopez is right behind him. And, you know, I looked last year, there were 7 relievers on the American League All-Star team last year. There were 5 names to the team, and then 2 more relievers were replacements who were, I think, starters who started the Sunday before the game. And, you know, Jorge Lopez is easily one of the best top 7 and top 5 relievers.
Right.
So the one thing you can do with teams that are bad is say, well, this player is clearly an all-star. They've got their one selection. We don't have to take anybody else. And Hayes is not going to get voted in.
No.
You know, Trout, Judge, and, you know, whoever the third outfielder is not going to be Austin Hayes. And so it's basically about the respect he's getting from the other players and the managers who kind of, you know, decide who those bench guys are. And to hit for the cycle, to do what he's done this year, the defense really helps him because he is ruining a lot of base runners' days, and they're going to remember that when it comes to try and decide who's in the All-Star game. I think he needs to be there. It could hurt him a little bit with how good Lopez has been because, you know, you know, whoever's deciding the roster just kind of take that out and say Jorge Lopez is a lock. There's the Orioles' one representative. I mean, if you're looking down the outfielders, obviously Trout and Judge are locks of the voting and because of the stats. But behind that, you know, you've got a group of 7 or 8 outfielders who are worthy but not locks, and Hayes is in there, and he certainly, I think, deserves to be there.
Now, you mentioned Jorge Lopez and the year that he's having. 3-3, 13 saves, a .75 ERA, a .81. I'm sorry, it's a .73 ERA, a .81 WHIP. He looks as unhittable as any pitcher I've seen all season. And a lot of people have been saying this past week, you look at his age, he's 29 years old. He hasn't had success at the major league level until this season. And they say the Orioles should trade him while his value is at the highest. I say the Orioles are at a point where they're about to turn a corner here with this rebuild. You need to hang on to players that can help you win ball games at the next when you've reached the next level of what the Orioles are trying to do. And relievers have a much longer shelf life than your ordinary player because of how the limited innings that they have. You see the good relievers pitch to their late 30s, early 40s. Are you on the trade Jorge Lopez train, or do you think the Orioles need to hang on to him?
If Jorge had been put in the bullpen last April and was doing this last June, I would have said trade him. because of how far behind it seemed the Orioles still were, because he's almost 30, because he was pitching so well, and because every single team needs relievers at the deadline. Every team looking to get in the playoffs needs relievers. You can see that by what the Orioles have gotten in their reliever trades that they've made over the past couple of years. I mean, the return that they got from Michael Givens from the Rockies is still baffling. Now, some of that is because of the Rockies, but still. But this year, I mean, this team is not making the playoffs. I said this at the top. They're not finishing over 500. They're also 33 and 39. They got 33 wins a month earlier than they did last year. They're 6 games out of a wild card spot, which is more of a fun thing to say than something we should actually be paying attention to.
Right.
I would keep him. I mean, he just hit arbitration, which means you got him for 3 more years, I think, after this, before you even need to think about free agency. You better hope that this Orioles team is competitive in the next 3 years. And if you can have Jorge Lopez at the back end of the bullpen, I mean, I sent out a tweet, I think about a week and a half ago, and, I basically said, all Orioles fans felt like they were on board with Jorge Lopez moving to the bullpen last year, and we all feel like we're right, but nobody saw him turning into prime Zach Britton. And I got some pushback on that, like, Zach Britton was one of the greatest relievers ever. Jorge Lopez right now is on pace for Zach Britton's 2016 season, which is one of the more ridiculous things we've ever seen. Keep that in Baltimore, and Zach Britton was never that pitcher again. He's still a sub-2 ERA his next 5 seasons after that.
Right.
If you can get anything close to that out of Lopez, and he's your closer and at the very least setup man for the next 3 or 4 years, there is no reason to get rid of that if you truly think that this season is a sign of things finally turning around.
No, I agree with you 100%. And people act like Zach Britton, his only good year was 2016. He had 4 years in the bullpen with the Orioles with an ERA sub-2. And then he goes to the Yankees, has consecutive years with an ERA sub-2. When he's healthy, he's one of the best relievers in the game. And I don't think and if Jorge Lopez is of the same ilk, I don't think you want to get rid of that guy when your team is finally starting to, and I don't think that you can justify it. The only way that you can justify to your fan base trading an elite closer like that is if you get a return where you get a quality starting pitcher or 2 in return that's major league ready. That's the only way you justify that trade, because you mentioned he is cost effective. He is still under team control, and he's pitching as well as he is. You have to get something huge in return. Otherwise, I say hold on to Jorge Lopez like grim death. Now, the Orioles, we're talking about trades. We're talking about the trade deadline and who could be going, who could be coming for the Orioles. Connor, who do you see the Orioles dealing at the trade deadline? Because I don't know. I know they're not going to be buyers, but I don't know that they're going to be huge sellers either.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because this bullpen has been so good, and they're still not in playoff contention. Again, I don't want them to trade Lopez. I just see a situation where somebody overpays for one of these relievers, and they ship them out. And I don't know who it's going to be. And it could be somebody who surprises you. And obviously, there's a caveat here because they already traded Cole Salter and Tanner Scott a week before the season started.
Right.
So they kind of, it ended up not gutting the bullpen as much as I thought it would, but they traded the 2 more veteran guys in the pen already. And they kind of left this bullpen to be kind of this younger, less experienced group, and it's obviously worked out really, really well for him. I could see, a guy who is really volatile but can also get on a hot stretch is maybe CNL Perez. And I could see him maybe being dealt just because, he has some underlying stats that are kind of concerning that a blow-up might be coming soon, but he still has good stuff. And somebody could still be really intrigued by him. And I think with the emergence of Nick Vespi, you still have a lefty in there who could kind of take over his role. And there's some other relievers even in AAA that could be ready to come up and replace him. But other than that, I mean, I think Trey's getting dealt. There's been no talk dating back years of an extension.
Right.
Obviously, he signed that mutual option, but that's just smoke and mirrors. A mutual option is essentially never picked up. It's just a way to make the player feel better and have him make a little more money in his last year. But other than that, I think he's going to be dealt. There's going to be a lot of teams looking for a bat, especially with the DH in the National League now, with the way that Trey's been hitting the ball, his exit velocity numbers, and all of his expected stats being so much better than his actual stats and how hard he's hitting the ball. And I just think somebody's going to want Anthony Santander with how good he's been. And I think the Orioles really want to get a full look at Kyle Stowers. And I truly think myself, and I think the Orioles think, that Stowers is a better long-term player than Anthony Santander.
Yeah.
And Santander's value pretty high right now. I mean, he's leading the team in homers. He's hitting good from both sides of the plate. And as we saw, on Thursday night, he was kind of a bad defender, then he was a good defender, then he was kind of a bad defender again last year. And he's gotten himself at least to, I think, a league average outfielder. And all that combined, somebody's going to take that corner outfield bat. And I just think it's time to move him. And there's honestly a little bit of the Santander thing where you're going to miss him for 10 games this year because of the unvaccinated situation. Who knows? You could be missing him for 10 games a year over the next couple of years going to Toronto.
Right.
And I really think they think Stowers is going to be better, and I just think that trade's coming. So I would say in terms of likelihood, I think Trey's number one just because of the free agent this year, and I don't think they're bringing him back. I'd say Santander two, and then one of the relievers would be three.
All right. I think we're on the same page there. I could see them dealing Odor, too, to maybe get Vavra up here, or maybe even Cesar Prieto later in the year if he continues to flourish in the minors. I don't think Odor is long for this roster, especially when he hasn't been hitting for about a month now. All right. Last question before we get to take to rake, Connor. Draft is coming up here in a few weeks. Orioles have the number one overall pick. Who should the Orioles draft, and who do you think they will draft?
So I have decided that I am fine with three names.
Okay.
I think if Drew Jones, Tamar Johnson, or Jackson Holliday are the pick, I will be okay. I think what we've learned is that all of those guys might actually be willing to take a little bit under the slot value as well. So the O's, might honestly pick the best player in the draft and still save a little money in their bonus pool. Now, Drew Jones has kind of been the sexy name. Obviously, his dad, for a time, was one of the best players in baseball. And, you're thinking, could we get Andrew Jones part two? And that's obviously, he's going to be a great player, and I'll be fine with him. I have been on the Tamar Johnson hype train for the last 6 months, and I'm just going to stay on it because he's still definitely one of those 5 or 6 players Elias has mentioned that they're considering. The big Tamar Johnson thing has been he might have the best hit tool that we've seen in a draft in a long time. Mm-hmm. And I get that he's a second baseman, long term, and that's a little scary. A second baseman's never been taken first overall because you want a projectable position. Yeah, some guys end up at second base, but you want to take them when they're a shortstop and not already a second baseman. And I get that. But if his hit tool is going to be that good, and, he's like the Ozzy Albies or better type player where it's just like, yeah, he's at second, but he's such a good hitter that, it just doesn't matter. I think he fits with what the Orioles want to do, just a tool that is so good that you take him number one. They'll save some money there. And, you'll see on mock drafts that Johnson is 6th or 7th now. The only reason is he didn't play at one of those, crazy high school academy programs. He doesn't go to these showcases every weekend. He's just kind of a guy who, plays at his local high school and is really good. And that's almost hurt his stock when he's not, a bad player. He's just kind of on a regular high school baseball team with not, 7 D1 studs around him.
Right.
And I think that's why a lot of people think he's dropping down to board. I just think the hit tool is so good that he could be Baltimore's second baseman, in 2024. And we will just be loving this guy. But again, if it's Holliday, if it's Jones, I'm totally on board. But I think I'd take Tamar Johnson.
All right, sounds good to me. Honestly, I'm okay with any of those 3 players. Also, even though I don't think he's the number one talent, I think that the bat plays well enough that I could get on board with Brooks Lee. But that would be my 4th choice at best, I think. But I'm leaning Drew Jones, Jackson Holliday, or Tamar Johnson as well. With that in mind, Connor, before we let you go, we play a little game on this show called Take to Rake. Take to Rake today is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland, which is the best place to be for the playoffs and all the upcoming events. Bet on every sport with 61 self-service kiosks open 24/7 and watch all the action from the best seat in the house. You can watch and bet on UFC 276 next Saturday night in the FanDuel Sportsbook. So make your reservations today today by emailing events@sportssocialmd.com. That's events@sportssocialmd.com. Connor, the way we play Take the Rake, I think you've played with us in the past, but I just want to refresh your memory about how this game works. The only rule is that you can't take the player that was taken by, so like you're our guest, right? So if we had a guest last week and they took Austin Hayes, you wouldn't be allowed to take Austin Hayes. However, we didn't have a guest last week, so the board is wide open for you, except for the fact that one of Zach and I had to win from last week. So I'm going to leave it to you to determine who the winner is because it was really, really close. All right, you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
All right. Zach took Adley Rutschman last week. He went 5 for 18. He had no walks. He slashed .278 with a .278 on base percentage, but a .667 slugging percentage and a .945 OPS because all 5 of his hits were extra bases, 4 doubles and a home run with 3 RBIs, 3 strikeouts, a batting average on balls in play of just .286 though. I took Ryan Mountcastle. He went 8 for 24, slashed on a .333, .360, .458, .818 with a batting average on balls in play of .471, 3 doubles, 2 RBIs, 2 walks, 7 Ks. Rutschman walked just the one time, or did not walk at all this past week. On the surface, you'd see the .333 batting average and the .360 on base percentage for Mountcastle, and you'd say, well, he wins. But Rutschman had 5 hits, and they were all extra bases, and he had the .945 OPS. Who won Take the Rake last week?
Yeah, I think this is like razor close, but honestly, I will give it to Adley, and only because this was like his big breakout week as well. So I think he gets the bump there, and he's basically penciled in for an extra base hit every time he goes up there. And that home run he hit, like I've been waiting for him to hit a ball like that, and no doubter off the bat. We finally got one, so I think the razor thin edge goes to Adley Rutschman.
Yeah, I didn't know which way to lean there, simply because of the fact that Mountcastle hit better, and he missed a couple of home runs by a matter of feet, but even all of Rutschman's outs were loud. Yeah, how many 100-mile-an-hour plus exit velocities did he hit right out of first baseman? And he was robbed of a double by a diving catch by Pollock yesterday. You mentioned the moonshot home run. So I am okay, even though it gives Zach a 5-3 advantage over me in Take the Rake. I am okay with Zach taking the victory on this one. However, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here, Connor, because it was so close. We're going to let you take the first pick this week.
All right.
And keep in mind, we are not going to have a show again until July 16th because Pressbox is moving offices. So this is a guy who's going to rake for this coming week, the week after, and the week after that.
That is a lot of pressure, and I feel like the easy pick would be to take Adley with the way he's heating up. But if I've got that much time and space, I felt like Trey is heated up, Ryan Mountcastle is heated up, Austin Hayes is heated up, Adley's heated up. We've seen it a little bit, but I think for the next 3 weeks or so, we are going to see 2021 version of Cedric Mullins. So I'm going to take Cedric Mullins. I think he's going to start hitting the ball out of the ballpark a little bit more and getting on base ahead of these guys, and we're going to see some more runs from the Orioles. I'm going to take Mullins.
All right. It's a bold move because he kind of hit that 248, 249 mark and then has just stayed there for like 6 weeks. But I would love to see a breakout. I just hope his swing decisions gets a little bit better because he's not getting on base at high enough of a clip to be batting leadoff, but he's got that speed. I'd like to see him start going the other way. Once he starts doing that, he tends to heat up a little bit. So Cedric Mullins, worth keeping an eye on. That is Connor Newcomb's pick for the next 3 weeks. Zach, who are you taking?
Tough one. Give me Austin Hayes.
I'll
take Austin Hayes. Yeah, we'll do that.
All right. Zach is taking Austin Hayes, and I'm going to do it for the first time in my history of Take the Rake. I'm taking Adley Rutschman because he's hit into some tough luck, and he's still hitting .320 in his last 13 games. I think that some of those balls that are getting called are going to find ways to drop now. I'm taking Adley Rutschman to rake the best for the next 3 weeks. Connor, what can we plug for you?
People can find Locked On Orioles wherever they get their podcasts, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and we're on YouTube as well at the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe there.
All right. Connor, always great talking with you. Thank you for taking some time for us today. Have a great vacation with your family, and we'll talk to you down the line, all right?
I will do. Thank you, guys.
All right, man. Take care.
And that was Connor Newcomb from the Locked On Orioles podcast coming on to talk all things Orioles and the draft coming up. Just to remind you all, for Take the Rake, Connor took Cedric Mullins, Zach took Austin Hayes, and I took Adley Rutschman. We have got to get our final break. We are so behind today. Final break, and then closing final thoughts here on the Bat-Around next.
Sports fans, the wait is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. This is your chance to win big right in your own backyard. Bet on every sport with self-service kiosks and watch all of the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Are you ready, soccer fans? This summer, the English Premier League returns to Baltimore. Arsenal, Everton, square off in the Charm City match, July 16th, under the lights at M&T Bank Stadium, home of the Baltimore Ravens. This is your only opportunity to take in a Premier League match this summer in the Mid-Atlantic region. Individual and group tickets are on sale at BaltimoreRavens.com.
The latest edition of Pressbox is available now, and it's our very first Salute to Coaches issue. On the cover, we recognize Ravens coach John Harbaugh ahead of his 15th season. Also inside, find tributes to Navy football coach Ken Niumatalolo, UMBC soccer coach Pete Caringi, Maryland soccer coach Sasho Sorovsky, and field hockey coach Missy Maharg, Mount St. Joe basketball coach Pat Clatchy, and Poly basketball coach Kendall Peace. We also honor recently retired Johns Hopkins lacrosse coach Janine Tucker and Calvert Hall baseball coach Lou Eckerl, the athletes whose lives these coaches have impacted, offering insights on what makes them special and why they've stood the test of time. Pressbox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Sports betting has come to Maryland, and we're ready to help you win some money. Tune in for Simply the Bets every Tuesday morning at 11:40. FanDuel Sportsbook assistant GM Leon Twyman and VSiN's Aaron Oster join the guys every week to give you all of the info you need and offer you a few winners. And every other Thursday at 11:40, tune in for Weekend at Bookies as Andrew Stecca and Alloy Sports' Brad Kronthal help make you some money for the weekend. So come win some money with us on Simply the Bets every Tuesday and Weekend at Bookies every other Thursday, brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio. Watch at YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline.
The Toyota Tacoma comes in a wide range of models and trim lines. You can choose the perfect Toyota to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today.
All right, welcome back to the Bat-Around as we let the old GCR and the new Bat-Around music play for you. Just want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by the latest edition of Pressbox, which is available now, and it is our very first Salute to Coaches issue. On the cover, we recognize Ravens coach John Harbaugh ahead of his 15th season, and the inside tributes to Navy football coach Ken Niumatalolo, UMBC soccer coach Pete Karinji, Maryland soccer coach Sasha Sarofsky, and field hockey coach Missy Maharg, Mount St. Joe basketball coach Pat Clatchy, and Poly basketball coach Kendall Peace. And we also honor recently retired Johns Hopkins lacrosse coach Janine Tucker and Calvert Hall baseball coach Lou Eckerl. The athletes whose lives these coaches have impacted offered insights on what makes them special and why they've stood the test of time. Keep in mind, Pressbox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com. Somebody asked, AJ McKirchie, is that his name?
I believe so.
McKirchie, and if I butchered your name, man, I am so sorry. It's a difficult one. He asked, will the Orioles 2023 opening day infield be Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westburg, Cesar Prieto, and Ryan Mountcastle, along with Adley Rutschman behind the dish? And in an ideal world, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that should be the Orioles infield on opening day 2023 in an ideal world. Now, when we had Kiley McDaniel on earlier, maybe they do the whole service time manipulation and we don't see some of those guys for 15 days. But you do get incentives for bringing up those players on opening day now. I believe that the only way that you don't get the extra year of service time... God, I can't remember exactly how it goes. It's if your player finishes in the top 2 for AL Rookie of the Year, you don't lose a service time. So I think you get an extra pick. You get an extra pick if you have them up on opening day, and they don't finish in the top 2 of AL Rookie of the Year voting. You get an extra pick in the draft, like a compensatory pick or something like that. So. Because of that, you might be able to see those guys. Look, if Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westburg continue to do what they're doing at AAA right now, and Henderson's hitting .293 after going 3 for 6 last night, and Westburg's hitting .413 after going 5 for 6 last night. He's got 5 home runs in 13 games. I cannot imagine a scenario in which the Orioles are like, nope, these guys aren't ready.
Right.
And I think that what you have in the infield right now, you have no answers at second base or third base. And Jorge Mateo, he is looking like a utility player.
And just a glove, really,
right.
If anything. So.
Right. So, and to hear Zach say that, because Zach loves Jorge Mateo.
Yeah, I do. I mean, the tools are pretty loud across the board, but it just hasn't translated, frankly, to him, hitting at a high level. And... unfortunately, the batting average is under 200 now, I believe, and he just hasn't put it together. So, at some point, I think you say, okay, this is enough at-bats. I've seen a lot of it. You got to start thinking about other options. I don't know that I'm not a huge I like Prieto. I don't know how high the ceiling is. I think maybe his ceiling could be just a slightly above average starting second baseman. But I certainly think Jordan Westburg and Gunnar Henderson are going to be, especially for Henderson, a star player in this league, and then Westburg, quite above an average shortstop as well. So I'm looking forward to those two guys, and that's the presumed infield of it.
And what I'm looking at, and I do think that Prieto is going to join Norfolk sometime in the near future, especially with Vavra getting hit by a pitch the other day, and now I don't know if he's going on the IL or if
he's not. No.
All right, but he hasn't proven he can stay healthy.
Right.
So you could see Terran Vavra playing second base for you, but he profiles very similarly, in my opinion, to Cesar Prieto, and
I think
maybe
Prieto's
with less power. I think the hit tool probably is a lot better, and I think Vavra is a guy who can hit for average but not do much else.
I got to see Vavra. I really liked the trade when they made it, but he's had some issues staying healthy, number one. But the other thing is that I've started to look at Vavra more of a utility kind of role and say that he can play a bunch of positions. He doesn't really excel offensively really in any spot. Maybe second base is the best spot for him. But he's played a lot of shortstop in his minor league career as well. But I think with Vavra, he's an athletic guy who's versatile. I think he's played some center field in the minors as well.
Yeah, he has.
For the Orioles. So, he's versatile, and they love versatile guys who can play a bunch of positions and, maybe can get on base at a decent clip. That's kind of where I see Vavra. I see Prieto as more of a starting quality player than Vavra, but we'll see. They both have a chance to prove themselves, and I think Vavra could be up sooner rather than later. I would not be shocked if Vavra is here by August.
Right, and the thing about it is that the Orioles don't have anybody blocking these guys. I mean,
no.
Arias is starting to hit again with that. Was it a lat or an oblique?
Yeah, I want to say it was a lat, but I could be wrong.
But he's starting to hit again. But he's still a while away. 'Cause that's about a month injury plus.
Sure.
Right, and then when he comes up here, unless he starts to hit like he did last year, and look, he's hitting to some bad luck. He's not really a guy you project as being a future piece for you. And so you have Tyler Nevin playing third base. You have Rougned Odor playing second base, and Mateo hitting, playing shortstop. And Mateo and Odor are both hitting below 200. Right. Richie Martin's hitting 217. These guys aren't guys who you project to be a main part of your lineup. Get some of these guys who you think could be part of your future up here, and see what they can do. I think that Cesar Prieto is going to hit at the big league level because he's hit at every level he's ever played at.
I have a final thought about the infield, too, and I'll talk about one more guy that I think could play into what they do this year and their success at this level. But, it certainly is exciting when you look at Prieto and Westberg and Henderson, and that's like you said, it's an ideal world. Those would be the three guys that make up your infield. But,
and offensively, it's kind of like the missing piece from this line because this line has gotten a lot better, especially when you throw Rutschman into it. And then you're like, all right, really, we got to figure out second base, shortstop, and third base to really get this a complete top-to-bottom quality major league lineup. And then when you get to starting pitching, whether they get in the free agency or whether it's players that they developed on their own or through trades, they're really just the starting pitching away from being a really competitive team right now. So, and you do get to lead off for final thoughts here as we have one of the longest shows ever here on the Better.
It has been a long one. Jonathan Arauz is a guy they claimed off waivers from Boston a few weeks ago. And while I don't think Arauz is a very good player necessarily, I do think he's a little better than Ryland Bannon. He's a switch hitter, has a little bit of speed, good athlete, can play a lot of positions. That should, I would like to see Arauz get a few at bats for the Orioles, maybe move around, see some different spots in the infield. Bat 8th or 9th in the lineup, which he's doing today in his Orioles debut, as he just got called up pretty recently today. But I don't know. Give him a shot. I don't expect a lot. His minor league numbers are pretty average, but maybe he's something. Maybe he's only 23 years old, and when you get a guy that's 23 years old, you still have some molding you can left. That's left to do with him, and there's some projection left for him. So, maybe give him a shot. I wouldn't say I'm not really. Again, I look at him maybe as a utility guy down the road long term, but give him a shot while you can. I don't think there's anybody really that much better vying for that spot.
If he's only 23 years old and he's already been in the big leagues a couple of times.
2 years,
yeah. He
was a Rule 5 pick, that's why.
Right.
By Boston.
Okay, but even still, 23, he doesn't have to be in the big leagues, and he still was there, right? So I'm talking about after the Rule 5 pick.
Oh, right.
He still made the major league roster at some point this year when he didn't have to.
Yeah.
So this is a guy who, look, I don't have any hopes for this guy whatsoever.
I don't really either,
I think that you're just trotting out another Richie Martin, Jorge Mateo type of player.
But when a guy is 23, there is some level left of, I guess, projection.
And there's a reason that he was taken in a Rule 5 pick. As a Rule 5 pick. For me, to go off yours, and this isn't my final thought, but just to comment on your final thought, we saw Cedric Mullins get a bunt base hit to use his speed to get on base because he's been struggling a little bit, right? And then you see Jorge Mateo attempt a drag bunt, and then he got hit by a pitch because Kopech didn't seem to like that. Yeah. I want to see these guys use their legs. You saw Mateo got his first hit in over a week the other night, and it was on an infield single to the third baseman. You've got elite speed. If you're not hitting, lay down some bunts. Try to keep the ball on the ground and beat out some infield hits. You've got elite sprint speed. Use your legs. I would like to see these guys try and bunt their way on and use their speed a little bit more and take better at bats. Your speed only helps if you're getting on base. So stop swinging at the freaking world and just get on base, right? So that's what I look at when I see these guys, and I'm like, your speed is worthless if you're not getting on base. So find a way to get on base. That's how I look at it. Now, for my final thought, and it's kind of a downer, but it needs to be said. People are getting really excited, and rightfully so. The Orioles are 27-25 of the last 52 games. They've won 6 of 8. They've won 3 in a row. They're playing really good baseball. But be prepared for the crash, folks.
I was going to say regression, sure.
Be prepared for the crash because the starting pitching is not good.
No.
And it's only getting worse. They don't have a ton of starters. They have nobody dominating at AAA except for DL Hall. And I wouldn't say what he's doing is dominating. He's just striking out a lot of guys, right? They have nobody to fill a rotation spot. Matt Harvey, if he can be middling, that's a bonus for you when he inevitably gets into this Orioles rotation. This team, aside from Kremer and a very small sample size and Tyler Wells, they're not pitching well out of their starting rotation. And Connor Newcomb used the term smoke and mirrors 3 or 4 times in our interview with him. This smoke and mirrors stuff with these bullpen games is only going to last for so long. Until the Orioles find guys that can give them quality innings, they're not going to get where you think they could get this year. They're not going to trade for starting pitching this year unless it's a guy like a Jorge Lopez who brings in a couple of minor league guys who are on the cusp of being quality major league starters. And like Orioles statistics, great follow on Twitter. Great dude. And said that his pick for the Orioles record at the beginning of the year was 73-89. He said last night that may be under now. It's probably still over.
Yeah.
It's probably still over because as good as we've seen the Orioles be in 2 facets, 3 facets, offensively, defensively, and out of the bullpen, the starting rotation is what it's all going to come down to. And if it doesn't get better, and I don't see how it will, it's going to come crashing down on them. It's inevitable. We see this every year,
right? Where
the starting pitching is the downfall of the Orioles because the bullpen gets taxed. And keep in mind, we're only 72 games into the season. You have 90 games left.
Mm-hmm.
You have 90 games left with a rotation that's tattered and torn right now.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a doom and gloom, shatter your glass ceiling or whatever. That's not the way. That's not the term because glass ceiling is for somebody on the rise. I don't want to shatter your hopes and dreams, but this rotation is going to be the downfall of this season. And just be prepared. Be prepared. It's fun to watch, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see the Orioles continuing this competitive stretch for the rest of the year with that starting rotation being what it is. Now it can get better. DL Hall can come up. Maybe Matt Harvey comes up and pitches a 4.5 ERA and helps him. Maybe they get Bruce Zimmerman back and he figures it out. But I have to see it to believe it. And right now what I'm seeing is a rotation that's falling apart, and it's only going to get worse. So, sorry to be that doom and gloom guy, but I do want to thank you all for tuning into the Bat Around this week and every week. We are off next week and the following week as Pressbox moves their offices to Baltimore County. We will be back Saturday, July 16th, to talk about the Orioles draft, which is the next day. They have the number 1 pick in the Major League Draft, which is on July 17th. We will have a draft prognosticator, a draft expert on the show on the 16th. Not sure who it's going to be yet. I have some ideas in mind, but we will have somebody for you on that show. Until that show, thanks to Stan the Fan Charles for his weekly segment. Thank you to Kiley McDaniel for his excellent segment with us today. And thanks as always to Connor Newcomb for being gracious enough to take some time out of his vacation to talk with us here on the Bat Around.